Good evening, everyone. I'll call to order this January 28th, 2025 Fairfield Plan and Zoning Commission meeting. We'll start with our meeting minutes from January 14th and January 21st. I have a motion on the item, please. Commissioner Harrison.
Finding both of those.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to approve the.
Thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Corsillo seconds. Commissioner Harrison.
Very straightforward, no issues.
Corsillo.
Nothing further.
Steve, somebody was missed.
I missed the 21st. I'm still updating on the 21st. I just abstained.
That's fine. I think that's our planning meeting anyways, right? Okay,
I am not all the way through the.
no worries. That's fine. Thank you. Any other comments or questions, or can we put this to a vote? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
6, and then the abstention from Commissioner. Commissioner Ford, excuse me. Old business, 467 Tungus Hill Road, 80 Soundview Avenue zoning compliance application of Jeffrey Vangeli, 46 unit residential development pursuant to section 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes. Just as a start, Commissioner Corsillo and Commissioner Levy, are you up to speed on this?
Yes. Yes.
So all the regular commission members are up to speed. Thank you. Mr. Wen.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the combined
Why don't
subject.
you, I could see some people trying to listen. Can you put your microphone up to you?
It's okay.
I think it has to
The
go up.
combined subject parcel is 0.57 acres in size and is presently approved by a 3-family dwelling access from Tungus Hill Road and a single-family dwelling access from Soundview Avenue. The application filed pursuant to section 8-30G of the Connecticut General Statutes proposes a 46-unit residential development comprised of 39 one-bedroom units and 7 two-bedroom units. A total of 14 units are proposed to be deed restricted as below market rate housing, comprised of 12 one-bedroom units and 2 two-bedroom units. These will be equally divided between the 60% and 80% income levels. The residential units will occupy 3 floors above 2 structured parking levels. We heard from Mr. Barnhart with respect to the affordability plan. He recommended a couple of minor tweaks that the applicant has agreed to. That includes providing the credentials of the proposed administrator in a slight adjustment to the fair market rent calculation, as well as provided a color coding floor plan to distinguish which units are initially offered at the 60% and 80% levels. There was a reported disparity in the sizes for the one-bedroom units between market rate and affordable. We went back and ran those numbers, and the average size for the market rate units are 723 feet, and the average for the below market rate is 709. So that's a much closer gap than had previously been reported. There's a total of 55 parking spaces proposed for the 46 units, which equates to 1.2 spaces per unit or 1.04 spaces per bedroom. A total of 37 spaces will be accessed from Tungus Hill Road, including 2 handicap spaces, and 18 spaces accessed from Soundview Avenue, which include 1 handicap space. 35 of the spaces will be assigned in the Tungus Hill garage, leaving 2 handicap spaces, and 11 spaces will be assigned to unit holders in the Soundview garage, leaving 1 handicap space and 6 other available spaces. The applicant has argued that this proposed number of spaces is consistent with ITE parking standards. There are presently no sidewalks on Soundview Avenue. There is an existing asphalt sidewalk on Tungus Hill Road. This proposal includes new concrete sidewalks along both street frontages along the site. There are 2 infiltration systems for roof leader drainage for water quality and groundwater recharge. The system passes through a vortex unit prior to site discharge. The Total impervious surface is proposed at 69.2%, which is a net increase of 45%. Estimated traffic trip generation during the weekday peak hours is 19 trips in the morning, with 7 of those trips via Soundview Avenue and 12 via Tungus Hill Road. 24 trips in the PM peak, 8 via Soundview, 16 via Tungus Hill. Traffic report indicates no impact to peak levels of service at the studied intersection, and intersection sightline analysis shows that the requisite sightline distances are provided for both driveways. As we heard, all delivery of trash removal will be accessed from the Soundview Avenue driveway. Neighbor testimony primarily centered on the concern of the scale and building massing, particularly from the Soundview Avenue perspective. Concern regarding the lack of existing sidewalk infrastructure on Soundview and the potential impacts of additional off-street parking and traffic. Removal of existing trees and drainage and noise concerns were also raised. After the first hearing, the applicant supplied a landscaping plan and a lighting plan to provide screening and also had a plan to provide screening around the rooftop mechanical units. The drainage system was also expanded slightly by increasing the size of a certain length of pipe to be able to accommodate reducing runoff rates up to the 500-year storm. The neighbors presented a third-party engineer who presented testimony regarding some potential technical changes that may be necessary in the drainage design. Concerns included the applicant's overestimate of the storage volumes the system could handle, with flow reductions being overestimated in considering differing factors of safety in the calculations. Concerns were also raised regarding the depth of the drainage system to groundwater, as well as the confined tight space into which the system is proposed to be installed. A third-party traffic letter was submitted indicating that the applicant's study did not take into account the increased frequency of delivery vehicles that would likely park in the street, and the total number of parking spaces was also questioned. In rebuttal, the applicant's drainage engineer indicated that they did use a factor safety, but not one as aggressive as the neighbor's engineer. He indicated that some changes to the plan could be made to address the concerns that were raised by the applicant's, which the applicant indicated that they would accept as potential conditions of approval. The applicant's traffic engineer indicated that the safety concerns regarding traffic are overstated, and that Soundview Avenue is not a busy street, and the development would generate less than 10 cars on Soundview in the peak hours. The applicant's attorney referenced the memo on file for the fire marshal regarding satisfying their concerns. And we heard some testimony and some photos regarding an event in which the neighbors parked cars on Soundview Avenue and asked the fire department to visit, and which did show the potential hindrance of a fire truck. The applicant's attorney argued, however, that while that may be the case, that the conditions represented in those photos do not represent the typical conditions found on Soundview Avenue. We did follow up with the fire marshal's office because there were some comments that were attributed to certain to allegedly made by fire department personnel. The fire marshal's office confirmed that any comments that may have been made during that event do not represent the position of the fire marshal's office. And further, if in the future, if fire lane restrictions could theoretically be implemented by the police department, if future conditions warrant their consideration. This commission is familiar with the standards for review for an affordable housing application. For denial to be upheld, the burden shall be on the commission to prove that the decision is based on sufficient evidence in the record. The decision is necessary to protect the public interest in health and safety or other matters within the commission's jurisdiction, and such interests clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing, and further, that those interests cannot be protected by reasonable changes to the proposed development. And as you've also heard many times, court cases have indicated that the record must establish more than a mere possibility of harm to a substantial public interest. The record must contain evidence of a quantifiable probability that a specific harm will result if the application is granted. Mere concerns alone do not amount to sufficient evidence to support the denial of an affordable housing application. That is all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wack. May I have a motion on the item? Commissioner Braun.
Move to deny the application.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
I have a question for Mr. Went first. The fire marshal follow-up, was that done in writing? I don't remember getting anything. Maybe I did.
No, it was a conversation. I traded some emails with the fire marshal and confirmed back that whatever comments that the neighbors that they had made at that event were not made by the fire marshal's office.
So nothing in writing. Okay, so I would like to deny this. I have kind of a statement or an outline. I'll try to do an outline form so I can go quicker. Deny without prejudice to enable the applicant to refile during the 8-30G authorized appeal period. It's a special provision that 8-30G allows to enable an applicant who has been denied or modified beyond what they accept within that appeal period, and to try to resolve some of the issues that are problematic within the application. So that's a special provision, and my opinion is that if the applicant feels that they can accomplish all the problems, meaning missing information, inaccurate information, harm that's been opined by two other experts, if that can all be done as conditions of approval, then it certainly could be done by filing a modification with better information during that appeal period. That would trigger a new public hearing and ample time. And my thought is, it's perhaps a lot of 8-30Gs are coming in and anticipating the moratorium that's imminent in our town in the next couple of months. So perhaps that's why a code review wasn't done, or perhaps adequate tests or other information was not obtained. But by us denying it and the applicant taking advantage of that provision in the 8-30G law, they could solve that without losing the time frame, because it would be under the original application's time frame. I mean, it would be a new time frame established, but they wouldn't have to worry about the moratorium. So the reasons are we have two experts that have not only opined that there's harm, but that there's either inaccurate or missing information. It's not a commissioner saying this, it's another expert saying it. So even though it is true that 8-30G does require that if we do deny, we have to have evidence in the record of harm, once there's evidence in the record by an expert that the information is inaccurate and or missing, that's foundational to the actual design of the project, I think it behooves the applicant to provide that information. The applicant has had access to the property. We don't. The applicant knew what the location and project specifics were before it was filed. The commission doesn't. Certainly the commission is not able to run tests and studies within the strict timeframes of an application. So in this instant, this application kind of reflects a lot of the flaws with 8-30G, but I certainly do not believe that the state legislature intended to have a commission approve unsafe projects because there's missing or inaccurate information provided. And it certainly should not be up to the commission to go out and seek information. So we now have information by experts saying there's missing or inaccurate information that's not capable of being corrected in a condition of approval. So some of that information is, and I was going to mention the fire access test that was done by the fire department. I don't know who said what when. All I know is clearly the applicant was aware that a fire test was done at the request of town residents. A fire truck went out there. Residents told us that they heard the local fire officials say there were problems with capacity in handling this property at this location, and they'd have to bring in trucks from Bridgeport. Nothing in writing was sought by the applicant. Don't know why. The only information we were provided from the applicant from the fire marshal was, the standard thing about, yes, the building meets fire code. And then they moved the two EV spaces closer to the entrance, and they moved the drainage system 8 feet farther away from Tunx's Hill to enable a little better access there. However, the test was done in Soundview, and I don't know why the applicant, after being aware of this project being done by the fire department, didn't ask for a report, and why we have nothing in writing, and we have to rely on a hearsay conversation that's not in writing. So that was one of my points. The other point was, we have a report from a traffic consultant retained by the neighbors indicating the data is outdated. The ITE has data mostly pre-pandemic, traffic patterns, delivery patterns, cars for hire patterns have all changed. And that's problematic. He recited a bunch of things which are in his report dated January 14th, 2025, which I would just incorporate by reference into my comments without reading through them all. But there are problems with many things. The loading spaces were inaccurate. It's common knowledge that Amazon trucks don't park in garages. A lot of people testified about that. It's a tight squeeze and they'd probably be going into the travel space to do so. There's an issue of pedestrian safety. One of our commissioners requested anything, study, information. None of it was provided with the claim that it's the town's problem. Well, regardless of rules and laws out there that say the town should be responsible for safety, of course the town is. That doesn't mean that this commission should throw up his hands and do nothing if it believes there's something unsafe. We should not be approving something we consider unsafe, especially when we have a consultant who at the end of his report states, in conclusion, based on my education, training, and experience, the deficiencies identified above are reasonably likely to create and constitute dangerous and unsafe conditions directly resulting from the proposed development. And rather than read his whole report, I'm just again incorporating that by reference into my comments. Similarly, with storm sewer system, okay? We had a lengthy presentation by an engineer who pointed out quite a few pieces of missing or inaccurate information. It was not rebutted. And he also pointed out it cannot be solved with conditions of approval. Basically, you'd have to get accurate information, then figure out how much the system should be redesigned. He's suggesting even moving the entire drainage system under the building from where it is. It's a tight squeeze. It was inaccurately reflected that the stormwater system goes to the edges of the property. He points out the minimum volume is not being stored in the engineered systems they're creating. Peak flows and volumes are not accurately reflected. They will not be handled in the way the drainage report is saying. One test pit was missing, and we don't know what that shows. So we don't know if the storm water system will properly infiltrate or store the water based on soil types that are not known. Some of the calculations were incorrect in overestimating storage capacity of stormwater. He pointed out that the stormwater system on Soundview is actually elevated too high, which would block access to one of the doors in the building. But if they lower it, it might reduce the storage capacity of that portion of the system. The large pipe that connects the Tunxus infiltrator to the Soundview infiltrator is also problematic because it relies on the faulty and flawed analysis of stormwater storage capacity. The Soundview catch basins, the elevations either are wrong or don't make sense. That could cause a big problem with water being directed to Soundview. That catch basin across and then the edge of Soundview. They also pointed out that they're actually changing the water patterns where it used to be currently 40% of the water flows towards the Soundview catch basin, but this would have 65% of the water flowing there. That needs to be better analyzed to understand what the repercussions could be and if that would overtax that system. The test pit needs a better safety rate applied to it. There's many other issues raised, and again, I'll just incorporate by reference the Redness and Mead report and testimony. I listened to it 3 times, not being an expert, and that's about as close as I can get to saying what he said. But at the end, he said, and our chairman asked him this very specifically, some items could potentially be done on a condition of approval and some cannot. And he said very specifically, multiples of these items cannot be fixed on a condition of approval. And I think this commission, we're here for a reason in a public hearing, okay? We're here to listen to the site-specific, project-specific facts that exist, the current conditions and the proposed conditions. We have experts saying we have foundational assumptions on which the entire design is based, which are inadequate or inaccurate. and which will show there will be harm. This system will not function the way it is supposed to function. That is one of the conclusions of the stormwater expert. That's why we have public hearings. So even with 8-30G, we are allowed to have some leeway. And if we believe what these experts say, which I do not believe were rebutted at all or adequately, then we have no choice but to deny this application. And again, the applicant has time to file a modification, answer those questions, do some of those tests, provide some of those studies, perhaps redesign it. So it doesn't, so it complies with our stormwater manual. So it uses better information for traffic, parking and delivery patterns. And perhaps we can get something in writing from the fire department. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ford?
8-30Gs are always present a conundrum for the commission. Yeah, and just kind of by way of history and background, it appears that based on the results of the Fairfield's most recent municipal election, that there is a mandate for these types of developments in the town of Fairfield. There were two candidates that ran for state representative on a platform of reforming General Statute Section 8-30G. The voters of Fairfield rejected both candidates, and as a result, the platform of reforming 8-30G and these types of predatory applications. Elections have consequences. When we approve 8-30G applications, I often commiserate with the neighbors who appear and object to the application. I generally comment that their objections and arguments should be directed towards our leaders in Hartford. However, recently at a forum held at Fairfield University, one of our legislators commented that there were not enough votes in the legislature to amend the 8-30G statute. This statement does not reflect the Democrats' veto-proof supermajority in the legislature, however, and it seems unlikely that neighbors will get much help if they turn for assistance from our leaders in Hartford. Nevertheless, the electors of Fairfield had an opportunity on election day to make a change in our leadership in Hartford. The voters of Fairfield soundly rejected that opportunity. As a result, these types of applications will continue to change the landscape of the town of Fairfield. The town planning and zoning is in itself an independent political body, not unlike our state legislature. We are elected to volunteer our time and serve as commissioners and review these applications, apply our state statutes and zoning regulations to each application. This application is brought pursuant, obviously, to General Statutes 8-30G, the standard of which Mr. Wendt just reviewed with us. And in such applications, the application cannot be denied unless the commissioners conclude that the application creates a significant health or safety concern. At the public hearing, I would like to thank Senator Tony Wong for appearing and being the only state legislator from the town of Fairfield to appear and speak at our public comment session. The other legislators, unfortunately, were silent on this application. Their silence can be construed as their tacit support for these 8-30G applications. I agree with Senator Wong and the neighbors when they presented testimony, argument, and evidence that this application will create significant health and safety concerns and that the public interest outweighs the need for affordable housing. I have driven down Soundview Avenue, Tungus Hill Road in my lifetime probably 100 million times, but since this application has been pending, I would say a few dozen times. At all times, I live about a mile from this site, and I've driven down the street in all hours of the day and evening. My experience is that Soundview Avenue is congested at most times of the day and night. Pedestrians will be at an increased risk of injury, especially our youngest citizens walking to and from McKinley School. The likelihood of property damage occurring will grow exponentially with 46 units and the associated increased number of automobile trips in and out of the site. Further, I have observed on numerous occasions motor vehicles avoiding the light at the intersection of Old Stratfield Road and Tungus Hill Road. Drivers avoid the light by using Soundview Avenue as a cut through to avoid the light at the intersection. The drivers recklessly speed down Soundview Avenue and take a left onto Beaver Street, speeding towards Tungus Hill Road just to skip the light at the intersection. This creates a dangerous situation, and it's just unsafe. Adding 46 rental units will necessarily create an undue traffic burden that will likely result in serious personal injury and property damage. I credit Simcoe's peer review that the traffic study of the applicant is underreported and does not match what is reality on Soundview Avenue. In addition, delivery services will park on the street. They will not use the garage for delivery purposes. I observed numerous Amazon delivery vehicles double parked on Soundview Avenue during my site visits. Fire marshals regularly comment to our commission that they avoid trying to put a fire truck in reverse, they don't like to back up fire trucks. The risk of injury to a firefighter grows exponentially when a fire truck is required to reverse off a property. Amazon, FedEx, and UPS drivers do the same thing. They try to avoid putting their trucks in reverse. This is to avoid causing personal injury and property damage to its vehicles and to others. Finally, I have not heard sufficient evidence to convince me that a fire can be easily fought from the south side of this property. There is no access for the fire trucks, and the neighboring houses are so close to this proposed development as to put them at high risk of fire damage in the event of a fire at this site. As a result, I vote to deny this application.
Mr. Harrison?
Thank you. I do support the motion on the table to deny it with the opportunity for the applicant to come back with a more complete application. For background, I grew up in Fairfield. Years ago, I wanted to go to Washington DC for a field. My father said that's great, but get a job. That's in 8th grade. So I got a paper route, and that paper route included Soundview Avenue, Tunks's Hill Road, that whole vicinity, Edison Road, you name it. And my dad actually had to drive me because it's just so crazy. But I just learned really quickly that those roads were congested. They were cars were parked on both sides. They were cut throughs. Just a very congested area. This was many years ago, and I've driven down there since then. And it's still the same. And I have to concur with the neighbors that spoke about the unsafe area that this application would create. Look, at 830G was intended with good reason to incentivize affordable housing in Connecticut. It's a letter of the law. We know that. But it wasn't intended to incentivize unsafe development in modest neighborhoods where there are already very old roads that are densely populated with inadequate sidewalks and a lot of pedestrians, including kids walking to school. I'm not going to reiterate everything Commissioners Braun and Ford said, but we did hear a great deal during the deliberations about fire access study that was conducted with fire trucks. And the applicant did not request a report from that study or from that site visit. We did hear from multiple witnesses that the fire official on site stated that there is inadequate fire resources and there would be an inability to reach this building on a timely basis. That's not something I want to approve. Since this applicant knew that the study was in fact out there, I just didn't understand why they didn't rebut it or do their own thorough research to counter that. Early on in the deliberations, Commissioner Randolph, he requested a pedestrian safety study. And basically the applicant's response was, well, that's the town's problem, not ours. Well, we're the town. It's our obligation not to approve unsafe developments. And I believe that there is enough evidence here that shows that this is unsafe. And I believe that we should deny this application for a lack of evidence. But again, I do hope the applicant will come back and give us a complete package of information. So that's all I have to say at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Barcella?
So I think, like, first of all, I'm sympathetic to a lot of the comments that a number of the neighbors made, including Mr. Mata, Ms. O'Gara, I hope I'm pronouncing those names right, that this is a part of town that's seeing a disproportionate share of the new housing development. So I agree we have to continue exploring ways to distribute new housing more equitably across town. But we still have to address the application that's before us. And as Mr. Wendt and others said, to reject an 830G application, the evidence has to show a quantifiable probability of specific harm. And further, that cannot be, that has to outweigh the need for housing. And I think I actually agree with a lot of what my fellow commissioners have said. I just interpret that and the testimony from a lot of the neighbors as evidence of existing unsafe conditions. I think I'll come back to that in a second. I think there are really three primary concerns that the neighbors raised. One was the size of the building, which is not grounds under the law for denial. Another was pedestrian safety. And again, I think the testimony certainly demonstrated that the current conditions in the neighborhood are unsafe for pedestrians, but I don't think that's grounds under the law for denial either. I think the testimony about Amazon delivery vehicles, no matter how much any of us believes that speculation is reasonable, I think it is, or even common sense, speculation also is not sufficient under 830G. The evidence that is in the record shows the project will generate 7 AM peak trips per hour on Soundview. It's about 1 every 8.5 minutes, and 8 PM peak trips per hour, once every 7.5 minutes. And the evidence includes the fire marshal denying that the neighbor's testimony reflects the position of its office. So in my view, this doesn't satisfy commission's burden for denying the application. I think, I know the town has made complete streets and pedestrian safety a focus, and I certainly encourage the administration to prioritize this neighborhood as it's figuring out where it wants to put sidewalks, traffic calming measures, other pedestrian safety measures. But again, I think I don't see evidence in the record that this will specifically cause further. I think the third major concern neighbors raised was drainage. The third-party engineer that was retained by the neighbors indicated that his concerns could be satisfied through conditions of approval. I heard Commissioner Braun suggest that there were some conditions that he did not feel could. I reviewed the transcript that, as far as I can tell, he insisted that he thought they could all be satisfied through conditions of approval. And that seemed reasonable to me as well. And under 830G, an application can't be rejected for reasons that could easily be addressed by the applicant through conditions. So based on everything I've just said, I believe the application satisfies requirements for approval.
Commissioner Randolph.
Generally, we're a nonpartisan commission, and I do agree with down the line with everything that's been said. And I'm very proud to be a citizen of this community because of all of you. You've showed up here, you care, you're articulate, you've taken the time. But we have our responsibility is a little bit different than legislatures. We have to interpret the law. And right now, the law of the state, and we do have to abide by the law, puts the burden of proof on not the applicant, but the community to prove that there's harm. So unless that has happened, we are not permitted to deny these applications. And the intent of the law is good. It's affordable housing, which I think we all would agree with. Now, the unintended consequences are, and I think Senator Wong, when he came in, summarized the issues with this. The intensity of this building is different. And I think we have a place for multifamily. This building's too big. I'm an architect. I can say that professionally, it's too big. But that alone, unfortunately, doesn't give us a basis for rejecting it. Other issues that were raised, and I thought Senator Wong did a good job, and I do appreciate him coming. Fire access. We have a letter. We've got to work from what's given to us, and the Deputy Commissioner Iannotti sent us a letter saying this building, he had 2 questions on there, both regarding EVs and some other issues that were addressed. So the fire department has said this is safe. Now, I think it's inappropriate and unfair that you got conflicting information from the fire department, because the official letter we got was that this building was safe. And that's the letter we have to rely on. The traffic reports are always ambiguous. Traffic is something that's debated at every meeting we have. But I think this traffic report was sound. It did not include pedestrian safety, which you, for those of you who've been at the other meetings, know that it's something I'm very committed to, and the town is very committed to. And it is not safe right now, and it will likely be worsened. But does that increased condition give us grounds for rejecting? I'm sorry, but it doesn't. The town needs to fix this problem, and we will fix this problem. I'm involved with this as another effort, but we will prioritize this should this get passed. But it's unsafe now, and kids walk to school there, and it deeply disturbs me. And it's something I feel strongly about fixing in this town. especially McKinley, because you've got a large number of walkers. And then the engineering questions that were raised, they're all very technical. I'm pretty technical. I thought that it was a good dialogue. I thought your engineer did an excellent job, but his conclusions were that these things could be addressed. So as much as I hate this project, on record, I hate this project. It's too big. It's ungainly. It's out of character, but unfortunately, those things don't give us, there's not enough credible evidence presented that would allow us to deny this project. And it's unfortunate, but we act more in this capacity as judges than legislatures. And we have to look at the law and what. So, but I hate this project.
Commissioner Levy, you or me?
I'm ready to speak.
Go right ahead.
Yes, I share the concerns expressed by Commissioner Braun and Commissioner Ford regarding this project. I heard and listened to the neighborhoods, and I agree, as Commissioner Randolph just pointed out, that the density of this building and its impact on, well, basically the density of the building, it's not appropriate for this community. And it's unfortunate that we already have an area where there's affordable housing existing on this site. Well, there will be additional, 11 units of affordable housing. There's already some affordable housing there, and this project is not well designed and not appropriate for the neighborhood. That being said, however, it's our responsibility as commissioners, and ultimately, if this were to be denied, it would be our burden within the judicial system. We would have the burden of proof to show that there is credible evidence in the record identifying a substantial risk to a public interest, which outweighs the need for affordable housing. And based upon the record here, I have not heard sufficient credible evidence that would meet that burden of showing a quantifiable harm that would outweigh the risk. I heard State Senator Huang, who asked that we consider basically four factors: density. The density is too great for this area, but that in itself does not rise to the standard for rejecting it. Fire access, that's a concern, but the official statement from the Assistant Fire Commissioner is that the building is safe. I also note that this is a fully sprinklered building, and in previous 830G applications, for instance, the one on Ruane Street, where there was no access between the new project and the rectory housing because of the closeness, that was resolved by, in fact, putting a sprinkler system in the rectory housing, which was sufficient to alleviate the concern with respect to fire. As far as the traffic report, sidewalks in danger, which State Senator Wong requested that we consider, again, I'm familiar with the area, and it is there are certainly risks for pedestrians, particularly trying to get to McKinley School, but that's an existing present condition. In fact, this project will result in additional sidewalks, which hopefully will lead the municipality to address the issue throughout the area, and it'll be a start toward the connectivity of safe sidewalk and pedestrian access. And as far as the fourth condition that was that State Senator Wong requested we address, the runoffs and contaminants. Again, that's something that I believe, based on the evidence, can be addressed through conditions of approval. In general, it's unfortunate, but the law is clear to my mind. I don't think that there's sufficient credible evidence to meet our burden to reject this, and we're therefore bound to approval, to approve it under those circumstances. I think, again, the problem lies not in the municipality, not in Fairfield, but the problem is up in Hartford. And 830G unfortunately puts the burden of addressing the serious problem of affordable housing. It puts that upon the developers who are not well suited to address that concern with appropriate concern for the neighborhood. And again, quoting Senator Huang, he says that the solution is basically for affordable housing is a collaborative relationship with local, state, and federal government together. Um, Ultimately, I think that's where it belongs, and I'm hoping that particularly during the moratorium period, that appropriate legislation can be implemented to basically put the responsibility for affordable housing appropriately where it belongs upon the communities as a whole, and avoid this the current conundrum presented by leaving it to the private sector to address a public need. Thank you.
Thank you. May I go, or do you wanna?
I just want to correct something,
Go ahead.
very brief.
Go ahead.
Okay, there's literally two places in the transcript, which you can download from YouTube, I just figured out, where the stormwater expert said it cannot be done, it cannot be fixed on condition of approval. One is at hour 1 hour and 49 minutes and 7 seconds, where he said, right at the start of his testimony, I do think there are not things that, confusing how he worded it, but things that cannot be done, and he suggested we leave the hearing open. We can't leave it open, we have a deadline. So he then went on to list a number of things that made this system not functional, in addition to having bad information and inaccurate information. And then when the chairman asked again for what could not be done with a condition of approval at 1 hour and 58 minutes, he repeated a list of items, which are all set forth in his report. This system is not functional the way it is. You can't do a complete redesign of a whole project on a condition of approval. That's what this whole hearing is supposed to be about, to approve this project. Minor little things could be done. These are not minor little things. And in addition, once you get the information, it could change everything, and the information is not all there, and it's inaccurate. So we cannot approve something in a Rooster River watershed, which already has 20 years of studies of the flooding problems, with a sensitive wetland just down the hill from here, when the system has been found to be non-functional. And when that stormwater expert said, in his opinion, the unsafe conditions will exist. It's his opinion that it will be adverse to neighboring properties and downstream water facilities. So.
Thank you. So I regrettably believe that this project needs to be approved with conditions of approval. I say that without any belief that this is a good project. I see that this is just simply unfair to the neighbors in a variety of reasons that they've outlined and my fellow commissioners have outlined. But I believe in applying the law as I understand it to be, that there is insufficient evidence in the record to support a denial. My takeaway from the engineer was that everything could be fixed or addressed. I don't recall him saying they've not conditions of approval. If he did, I think upon further examine or discussion, he said things could be worked out with the engineers. And in my mind, when he had said that, that leads to a condition of approval that I think we are required to do, reasonable accommodations that require that the engineer work with, I would put this as a condition of approval, that their engineer work with our town engineer to address the issues that are raised. And should our town engineer not be satisfied with that, then that would be addressed and they could not move forward. But Problem we have is, in my opinion, the neighbors have rightly said that the area is congested. The characterization is, but congested, and that is a concern for them. Problem is going from that present condition and how will this project affect the current condition? Will it rise to a level to have substantial impairment to public health, safety, welfare, et cetera? And the evidence provided seems to me to be mere possibilities as opposed to a probability of a specific harm. And I think that is counterintuitive for a lot of people. It has when I was starting off as well. You have an unsafe condition, you add however many units, 55 units or 46 units, how can it be that not be enough? And I think the courts have been pretty clear. And in doing this in litigation, in my practice, that kind of thinking is a possibility and not the substantial evidence of probability that you need. And I take no pleasure in saying that. It's just as far as I understand the reality of the situation. And people have asked me, what can we do? And my response is that's the burden we've had for as long as I've been on this commission. And potentially the problem with 830Gs in general and the case law that goes with it. As far as traffic concerns, I did not credit Mr. Monteleone's report. It didn't come across as credible to me. I thought the ITE's standards that we are bound to use, and Mr. Monteleone's suggestion that it was outdated, I felt was insufficient. His references to parked cars for sight lines when we've all learned and known that that's not to be taken into account. I just did not find his report to be too credible. Even if you assume 60 car trips in the morning or in the evening from this site of 46 units, over a span of an hour, that's one car a minute. And it just, in that frame of mind, it's hard to see how that rises the current conditions to a level that allows us to enter a denial. The fire marshal has made his position clear. I don't know, I wasn't there at the time what was said when there was an in-person visit. We have subsequently reached out, and the position of the fire marshal is that there's adequate fire, addresses the adequate needs for fire protection. So I don't know how we go against that. And yeah, I don't think there's much more I can say except that I think the law as is requires this. It compels me at least to find in this way. I would ask, I mean, depending on how the vote actually goes, if the denial is defeated, I would think there would be needs for conditions of approval to address the engineering aspect and anything else that any other commissioners believe necessary. But finding reasonable accommodations is required of us. And I think that these can be done, and that's the reason I would not go with a denial without prejudice. Commissioner Harrison.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the commission. Everybody had very thoughtful comments and deliberations tonight. I do appreciate that. I really do. I do want to ask the chairman what he meant by working with the engineer, because when I read through the application, we didn't have any comments from the town engineer. We had no comments from WPCA. The applicant didn't participate in any voluntary code review. So anything that could have been mitigated early on wasn't, because we just didn't have that kind of participation. So what do you envision?
I would think a condition of approval would be something along the lines of that the applicant's engineer is required to work with the town engineer in an administrative capacity to address the issues that were raised in the neighbor's engineering report to the satisfaction of the town engineer.
And I think it's worth reiterating that I think there was some stormwater system inadequacy with the application. I don't think there were any mandatory test pits were done. There is inadequate vertical space, as I understood, between the bottom of the system and the top of the restricted layer of soil, which means it may not properly drain. So I think that is a concern. That is a safety concern. But again, I I would support that condition of approval because we really do need engagement from the town engineer, which we have sorely lacked on this.
You're well noted. It would have been nice to have a code review. It just seems like it was rushed to us. Maybe because of the moratorium, I don't know. That would have been helpful in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Commissioner Braun.
I'm not sure I attended the same hearing everyone else attended, because I heard very clearly from both the residents experts that there was quantifiable, specific harm that would result. Also, we're not experts in stormwater. Don't know why our town engineer said no comment, and that's all we got. Maybe the person who wrote no comment had the same last name as a person who was the surveyor for this project. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But we got no comment. So we're relying right now on the expert. I don't think we can sit here and say, one expert said there was incomplete information, incorrect information, inadequate storage as required by the stormwater manual and as required by the town of Fairfield. That's what the expert said. Now we're gonna go back and ask the town engineer that preferred to have no comment and didn't supply any comment, work with them. How are they gonna work on a report by somebody who's not involved in all these revisions? And are we gonna sit here and allow this whole project to be completely redone without another public hearing, without us reviewing it? When our town department didn't even take a look at it before. So I have a big problem with that. We have an expert saying it will cause harm. It won't work. It will not be functional the way it is. It does not satisfy the stormwater manual. It does not reduce peak flows and volumes. It does not store enough. Therefore, everything that's involved will not function properly. There's so many things wrong with it that were very, very specific. And when you have a stormwater system that doesn't work, that causes harm. That's what he said. So I don't understand how that could be misinterpreted. That was not rebutted. Their stormwater consultant did not rebut any of that.
Again, my recollection was he said, the neighbor's engineer said, everything I've discussed can be addressed.
He specifically did not say that.
I remember him saying that because I think that was the simple reason why the applicant's engineer didn't go point by point. He had said rightfully, I think, considering what was said, that anything can be addressed, we will address anything that needs to be done. That's my recollection of it. I do remember him saying, that I don't think condition of approvals can be made. And a lot, listen, a lot of people will say what they need, the magic word, so to speak, and then we get it down into the nitty gritty, learn what actually is the case. And he did say, I remember asking what conditions approval, what are issues that cannot be addressed by conditions of approval? But then in some point in his thing said, anything I said here can be addressed,
Well,
fixed. So, I mean,
I didn't say, he said some things could, and the whole project could potentially be workable, but that would require a whole lot different types of testing. And he said it would not function the way it is based on certain tests, like the high groundwater level. It wouldn't work. There's not enough vertical distance between the bottom of the infiltrator and the restricted layer of soil. It wouldn't work. So are we gonna redesign a whole site plan without us being involved at all? That makes no sense to me.
well, I think, as you said, we're not experts in this, and if town engineer reviewing this project is satisfied with the condition, with the adjustments, if any, but I suspect there will be adjustments. I mean, I said it yourself, we're not experts in that respect. I don't know why a public hearing would be required to talk about the technicalities of the drainage if the town engineer approves it under what I would think would be a sufficient condition of approval. I think that's sufficient in my mind.
Then we have no role. Why even have our commission? Are we just potted plants? We're just sitting here, delegating everything we do to the town engineer that already decided not to review this? I don't comprehend that.
Other comments or questions? Commissioner Harrison?
I would hope going forward, and I know that we do have an influx of 830G applications, that just given the natural large scale of them, that the town engineer does find the time to review them. I think it's appropriate again, I'm just surprised that the town engineers had no comment in something this large. Very, very disappointing, to say the least.
Further comments? We put the current motion for denial to a vote. All those in favor of denying the application without prejudice, please say aye or raise your hands. 3 hands. All those opposed,
Nay.
motion for denial is defeated. May I have another motion? Commissioner Cursillo,
I'll move to approve of the following conditions.
I can't hear you.
I will move to approve with the following conditions: that the applicant's drainage engineer work with the town engineering department to address the concerns raised by the third-party engineer retained by the neighbors to the town's satisfaction. That the applicant adjust the floor plan to bring the size of the affordable units further in line with the size of the market rate units, subject to administrative review by the town. For example, resizing, so at least half are identical in size, not comparable. And that the applicant gets sign off from the town on any sound attenuation materials for the roof mechanicals prior to construction.
there a second? Well, let's get a motion on. Is there a second? Commissioner Randolph seconds. Commissioner Porcillo, anything further?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Randolph,
The conditions that Commissioner Cursillo have raised or made as conditions for approval seem to address many of the issues raised by Commissioner Braun involving drainage and engineering. I would, if it's possible, add a recommendation or request for a additional traffic and safety study for sidewalks to this. It's out of our purview to make that a condition because it's out of the area of study for the specific project, but it does affect the overall neighborhood.
Commissioner Porcillo,
I am okay with adding that as a recommendation.
it's a recommendation, not a condition. Obviously,
Can you repeat what you're asking? Recommendation?
Recommendation that the applicant pay for an engineering study for pedestrian movement to the Finley School. From Soundview specifically. And in the surrounding neighborhoods.
you good, Mr. Watt?
Yeah, before you call for a vote, I want to reiterate all of them, so you go ahead, make sure we're.
That's
We
fine.
can't hear you.
Before we vote, we're gonna reiterate what was conditions and recommendations. Commissioner Harrison, then Levy.
Thank you. I appreciate Mr. Randolph's and Mr. Porcello's conditions of approval, but just for you, Mr. Chairman, can you just, Mr. Randolph, can you just talk about more of the purpose of the study? Because it's obviously a recommendation. They're not bound to do that. But if they do the study, like, then what? Because it's,
So
I
the,
just want to make sure it has teeth.
yeah, so the expense of a tangent, developers are not required to make improvements off-site unless there's a specific cause for what they're doing. But we can strongly request or encourage them to do engineering analysis and detailed design work. So the cost of the sidewalks that are necessary there likely be borne by the town, which we will encourage the town to prioritize. But we can only reasonably ask for engineering work to be done. engineering and design work. So I wish I could ask the developer to put the sidewalks in, but that's unlikely to be successful. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Levy,
Yeah, I'm not sure if we need it, but do we also need a condition that the affordable housing plan be amended to meet Mr. Barnhart's concerns?
was that the comparability one?
Yeah, comparability and also something about as far as identifying the administrator.
Right. We definitely have the comparability one with the second condition of approval that they be addressed administratively, that the affordable units be brought in line size-wise with the market, I would think.
We hold Mr. Barnett's additional recommendations on that point.
Yeah, there were a couple of items that I addressed earlier in my comments that the applicant agreed to resolve as a condition of approval. So I think that it was,
Yeah, can you put your microphone up, Mr. Woods, please?
yeah, that was, there was a slight adjustment in the calculation for the fair market rent that needs to be made. They need to show on the floor plans a color coding as to which units are going to be offered at which price points. And as was already mentioned, provide the credentials of the proposed administrator as well as what was previously mentioned. I think we can fold that into the condition 2 that was recommended that the applicant adjust the floor plan to better align the market rate units and the below market rate units. If those other items can be added to that to be a single condition that addresses those items that Mr. Barnhart raised.
There's Corsillo and Randolph. Do you understand that? Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Motion so amended. We will go over the full motion before our vote. Commissioner Levy, are you done?
Yes,
Commissioner Braun?
I would like to amend the motion to require that the third-party engineer who wrote the report, that now we're asking the town engineer and the applicant to satisfy that he be involved, whether the town has to retain him or somebody else has to retain him. I think the town should retain this engineer to make sure that all the points we're asking the parties to comply with are followed. Our engineering department did not request this. We're asking our engineering department to implement the report done by Redness and Mead, who has, I believe, worked with the town and for the town before. So it shouldn't be a huge ask to retain them to make sure that their recommendations, concerns are all satisfied.
I don't have a problem with him being involved. I don't believe we can. The town can retain him specifically, this commission can retain him. I certainly didn't want to I don't think we would want to put a condition that, he can't do free work, obviously, and I didn't want to put a condition on the neighbors as well, but we can certainly include, I think, language that says, should the neighbor's expert wish to participate, that he be allowed to. That.
Yeah, I have a suggestion, if I may. I agree. I don't think we can compel either the neighbors to engage the engineer further or compel our own engineering department to hire them, but I have a language I would propose that I think it says what Commissioner Cassillo says: with the applicant's engineer shall redesign the drainage system to the extent necessary to address the redness and Mead third-party review to the satisfaction of the town engineer prior to building permit being issued. I don't think we can compel them to be involved. Their report is of record. As is the testimony. So I am confident that the engineering department will take into consideration those legitimate issues that were raised that the applicant's engineer agreed were legitimate issues that they believed that they could redesign. So I think addressing their report specifically is appropriate, but I don't think we can compel them to be retained. Should the town engineer wish to do so, they obviously can, but I don't think we can compel them to do that.
Can we prevent that engineer from being involved if he wishes to be involved?
No, absolutely not. I
But the
mean,
neighbors-
why would we do that?
I'm
No,
just saying, can he have a seat at the table since it's his report we're relying on?
to the extent, that he's engaged in the process, I don't see any reason why we would reject that.
How would he be engaged in the process, though?
Well, again, I don't think we can compel the town to hire him, is what I'm suggesting to you.
If the residents that retained him pay him some money and he shows up, will he be allowed in the room when they talk about this?
Well, I don't know if it's a matter of being in the room. It's a matter of having eyes on whatever revisions are made to the process. If he's going to be involved, I don't think we would deny anybody's third-party review of that to the extent they wish to be involved.
Commissioner Randolph.
To satisfy, I think Commissioner Braun's concern, which is reasonable, perhaps we could add language that says designed to industry recognized professional standards, which would then allow others to review it rather than specifying an individual, but that's my suggestion. Address, because Commissioner Braun's concern is that the hearing department perhaps didn't review it as thoroughly as they should have. And that's an existing concern. And so if we say it needs to be designed to recognize professional standards, then that warrants the review.
I think just having, I would think just having the language that Mr. Went had provided with maybe additional, should the neighbor's engineer be willing to be part of the process, that he be participate.
That's more specific, but that would satisfy.
Yeah, I don't see any reason that wouldn't happen. If we're specifically referencing the Redness and Mead third-party review that was raised, that those concerns need to be addressed to the extent they wish to participate in that process. I don't see any reason why the town engineer would
I think
ignore that position.
I think Commissioner Braun, I think, would be more comfortable with language that in this condition of approval that specifically allows for him, and I just forget his name, be involved should he say so choose, in the sense that, yeah, so choose. So I mean, Commissioner Braun, is that accurate?
I don't think he should be blocked from being involved if he
No,
wants
I-
to be involved.
No, I don't see any
And I
reason
don't think
why.
that language blocks him, but I think your request of something more explicit that he be allowed to
He should be
participate.
invited into the process if somebody's willing to pay him to do it.
Yeah.
But I have another question. What if it can't be done? I mean, according to him, you don't have adequate vertical distance, and you can't do a test pit because they have to demolish a building to do it. And by the time they're doing that, they're already on a moving train to development. So
It can't
what if it
be,
can't be done? They redesign the whole project, scale it back, move it over, move drainage systems over under the building. What if it can't be done? Who decides that? It's not us anymore.
according to the language, it would be the town engineer decide whether it's, the design is sufficient. If he does not, then the project doesn't move forward.
But we're the ones responsible. That's the problem. We're giving up our responsibility to a town engineer that's already disclaimed responsibility by saying no comment.
Don't know if he disclaimed
Well,
responsibility,
they said
but
no comment.
I mean,
We're bringing it back in for further review of.
That would be
the
part of the
Come
redesign
back
of
process.
this.
before us.
part of the building process anyways, I believe, is going through that. But we are bringing him back in the process and setting him to be the decision maker, because as you said, we are not the expert when it comes to this. So I'd leave it to an expert. Sorry, Commissioner Harrison.
Thank you. Can we further add to that amendment that if something substantive has to occur, that it would come back to us? This can be. Look, I'm not saying it very artfully, so.
No,
forgive me.
your point's
But-
taken.
I'm just wondering, I'm concerned though, if something substantive has to be changed or modified. I don't know, I would like to have I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a good ad that says should, something along the lines, should the redesign of the drainage system cause substantive changes to the site plan, then said site plan will be further subject to the review of this commission.
Great, thank you.
Under what provision of 8-30G, is that allowed? Under any,
It's not specific to A-30G, it's just a natural course of any application that if there's a substantive change that arises in a plan by the nature of the conditions that warrant a review of this commission, we would put it back before you for that judgment.
we would hold another public hearing then?
Well, that would be up to you. I doubt we would hold another public hearing, but if there's, if they get to the point where they can't accomplish the drainage system at all, then the project's not going to go forward. And if they have to substantially redesign the entirety of the project to accommodate a drainage system, then I would argue that yes, that warrants a new application.
Not that we argue it, it's that would happen. It would have to.
Right. But what we're saying here is should there be substantive changes to the site plan as a result of the drainage revisions, then that would be subject to your review. And then at that point, you could determine whether they are de minimis changes or whether it warrants a new application.
Commissioner Corcel. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had a question. No. Oh, my mistake. Why don't we go over what the current motion with all the conditions of approval and the recommendation for approval is? Can I ask you, Mr. Winton?
Give me 10 more
Yeah, no
seconds
worries, but I'm gonna ask you to do it because
for all of our benefits.
you don't mind, please.
Okay, so we have the number one, the applicant's engineer shall redesign the drainage system to the extent necessary to address the readiness and meet third-party review to the satisfaction of the town engineer prior to a building permit being issued. Should the site plan, should the drainage revisions result in substantive site plan changes, such changes shall be subject to the commission review and approval.
Just note that in there that the neighbor's engineer, if so retained, may be a part of that process.
Okay.
Shall be a part.
Okay, that will be added if I will, by name, and Mr. Ginter is his name, if it were written in meet, I don't need, we have to specify if they decide to hire a different engineer. I don't know that we need to specify to whatever engineer that is maybe engaged by the neighbors shall be part of the process if so further engaged.
Fair point.
Number two, the applicant shall modify the affordable housing plan pursuant to the recommendations made by Mr. Barnhart, including adjusting the unit sizes to equalize the fair market rate and below market rate units. This one I may need a little assistance on. So the applicant shall demonstrate the efficacy of the sound attenuation proposed for the rooftop units. Is that what, I don't know what.
I had it
exactly
as a approval, an administrative approval from the town.
Yeah.
Not just a demonstration, but yeah.
Okay,
I think I recall there was some sound attenuation that was proposed on the top of the roof for the air conditioning units,
mechanicals,
the mechanicals.
Right.
And then there was testimony from the neighbors that whatever they were planning on using wasn't sound attenuation materials. I think that's what it goes towards, right?
Mhm.
okay. That's folded up into here.
Jim, I think they were.
Section of other.
Then the last, we have a recommendation that the applicant pay for pedestrian safety study for pedestrians to McKinley School from Soundview Avenue and surrounding neighborhood to provide some engineering analysis that the town could further implement in the future.
Are there two more? Hold on. Are there two more from the housing?
I didn't quote them, I just incorporated them by reference, but what he's asking for is the rent adjustment the credentials of the proposed administrator and the color-coded floor plans.
That's the current motion. Good. Commissioners, Porcello, Randolph, are you good with that?
Yes.
Commissioner Braun?
I'm sorry,
Okay.
pedestrian safety study. If it has recommendations, will those be required to be incorporated into the construction?
No, it would provide the basis for the town to consider further implementation, as we cannot require the applicant to make the offsite improvement.
Further comments or questions?
Can I ask a question? At
Sorry,
what point does the town take up
Excuse me, ma'am, I'm
responsibility
sorry.
and not put the burden on the neighbors to continue to pay out of pocket if
Ma'am,
the engineering was
It's an executive
incomplete
session.
and wrong?
This is not time for public comment. This is,
Can you
Commission's
tell me
time.
when that could be addressed? At what point in the whole process that gets addressed?
not now.
I'm happy to address that comment tomorrow if somebody wants to give me a call.
Actually, the engineering, when you're doing this
Ma'am,
engineering,
again,
in
this
the
is not
town,
time-
walking around the
Not
neighborhood.
time for public
seeing
comment.
safety,
This is the commission's
what time of
time.
year are they doing that?
Executive session to
Because kids are
determine a
more
motion.
active outside
Appropriate for the
during
commission
the
to
warmer
public At
months.
this point to be talking. Will not be accepting questions, comments from the public at this time.
Do you walk these neighborhoods?
Will not be accepting, we've already discussed and made our our comments known at this time, on this application. It was pretty clear from the commission how we felt about this project. Those who were voting for it, what we thought about it and what we felt. compelled to do. We put this to a vote. Any comments?
I just have one.
Go ahead.
I appreciate the conditions being added. I've never seen conditions like this being added. And even though it would cost, at least it would provide some input and perhaps a change of the plan to scale it back. I still feel from the actual transcript, which I read about 3 times, that there will be harm and it cannot be functional. So I will not be changing my vote, although I do appreciate these conditions of approval, which may or may not result in something in the future that's better than what's being voted on.
Thank you. Final comments, or can we put this to a vote? All those in favor of the motion as stated by Mr. Wentz, with the conditions and recommendations of approval, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Or all those opposed. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for a very thoughtful discussion. Moving to our public hearing. Call 2179, 2199 Post Road, 29 Fairfield Place. Application of Sunshine Acquisition Group LLC to establish a center design business district plan presently zoned design commercial district. All three, I guess, Mr. Attorney Fallon, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Application of Sunshine Group Acquisition LLC to amend section 12.3, 12.16, percentage of residential use, 12.7 setback height, total floor area, 25.7.9, percentage of below market rate units, 28 parking, 31.2.16 definition of height of the zoning regulations, and 2179, 2199 Post Road, 29 Fairfield Place, special permit for the coastal site plan application, Sunshine Acquisition Group LLC pertaining to a proposed mixed-use commercial residential building. I believe you were in public comment, you're right.
Correct. Public
Thank you. At this time, we are in public comments for these applications. Do you offer the Attorney Green?
believe so.
I see here.
I believe so.
He's just out. Okay.
Refresh my recollection. We haven't started public comment on this, right?
We were
No, you had
partly way through public
We did?
comments.
All right.
Mr. Green actually had testimony from Mr. Santa.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Got it.
and
Okay.
Mr. Monteleone.
No, I know. We have that, him, and then we have the one on Stilson. That's what confused me.
Thanks, Mr. Fallon. That was showing my
Many,
age.
many meetings ago.
Yes, it was a while ago.
Pending one.
Commissioner Ford, you should not feel bad. It was a while ago.
I might not-
Well, let me start because Commissioner, Mr. Green is not in the meeting.
He's coming.
Or is he coming? I'd like to at least get his take on where we should go first. with
I
him.
have a question.
Why don't we take a few minutes? Mr. Green, hour. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my question was, can somebody just recite what happened so far? It was probably about a month ago that we had.
Mr. Green was late, so he gets to do it.
His presentation.
We presented our
Our presentation was.
Why don't you come up?
presented.
I know what you meant.
We presented our application in chief, and then it was open to public comment. I believe the first public comment was Mr. Green, who called a few witnesses, Mr. Monteleone and Mr. Santa.
Can you
And I
speak up,
believe-
please? We
Can't hear you.
I believe he is still here as part of his presentation.
And has the
That's
public
fine.
spoken also? Members of the individual?
No, I don't think we've gotten to public comments.
Oh,
Excuse me.
Gone there.
I don't think we've gotten to the rest of the public. I'm thinking of, and I think you may be thinking the same thing of Stilson, where we have members of the public.
Okay.
Attorney Green and Attorney Rizzio's firm. Attorney Green, good evening. I think you're in the middle of your presentation, I believe, right?
I am, for the record, Joel Green. Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to yield to a few members of the public for a lot of time to stay or have home issues or whatever, or I can proceed.
I'll open it up. Is there a member of the public for these items, 2179, 2199 Post Road and 29 Fairfield Place? This is public comment. Is there a member of public that wishes to be heard? Yeah, Attorney Green is yielding for your benefits, should you choose.
Here we go.
Yeah, if you can just come up, state your name and your address for the record. Keep your, feel free to sit or stand.
Sit.
You can put your, sorry, if you can put your microphone up to your chin-ish area. Comments remain to the issue and off we go.
Thank you. All right, my name is Thomas Keys and I live at 50 Fairfield Place. Just to review what happened, you guys were asking about what happened at the last meeting. Sunshine Acquisitions did present. They presented some false information as far as the width of streets in our neighborhood by fitting a cyber truck at 29 Fairfield Place and having any space for any cars to get in and out of the neighborhood. That would never happen if you knew the neighborhood. Along with my wife, Kristen, and my three children, ages 14, 11, and 7, I've been lucky enough to live in our house in our wonderful neighborhood for over 15 years. My front door is about 75 feet from the proposed exit of the development by Sunshine Acquisitions. I'm up here in front of you all tonight to ask that you please strongly consider the negative impact that the proposed development by Sunshine Acquisitions will have on the people in the neighborhood, particularly our young children, of which there are many. As a father and one of the longest tenured residents of the neighborhood, I feel it is necessary for me to voice my concerns for the benefit of all the young children in the neighborhood. There are a multitude of reasons that this proposed development should not be approved, including the following of current zoning laws, which were passed to protect our family neighborhoods, the unsafe traffic situations that will inevitably arise due to this large complex, and the physical building itself just not fitting in with the overall aesthetic of the neighborhood. I've already submitted a letter back in November addressing many of those issues and concerns, but I'm here in front of you all tonight to bring up what I feel is our most important concern. The increased traffic this will bring to our neighborhood and the safety concerns that ultimately come with it. My neighbors and I did spend a significant amount of money for a traffic report, which you guys saw a month and a half ago. That was unneeded. I could have told you exactly what that traffic report was going to say. There's too much traffic in our neighborhood already, and this is going to bring even more unwanted traffic and unsafe traffic, more importantly. Our neighborhood is simply not equipped with any sidewalks or wide enough streets to safely allow the increase in cars and traffic. My street, Fairfield Place, already essentially has no street parking available because of the restaurant Gruel Britannia's patrons and employees park in our street. The restaurant is also actively going to lose 8 parking spaces if this proposed development is approved, because they have parking at 29 Fairfield Place, so they're going to lose that parking if this development is approved. This is going to add even more cars to our narrow street, which I measured at 23 feet wide. With these cars, along with the cars from the development now parked on our streets, and the new residents, their guests, delivery drivers, etc., speeding through our neighborhood, the safety of our school-age kids is greatly at risk. To say that we live in a completely safe neighborhood free of traffic concerns would actually already be a lie. Safety concerns regarding traffic already exist in our neighborhood, and this proposed development would only exacerbate these issues. It is well known and documented that our neighborhood already deals with the very unsafe situation of cars speeding through it to cut the light at Pine Creek and Post Road. We've been dealing with this for as long as I've lived here. The increased congestion before the light is bound to increase this unsafe situation and the likelihood of a child getting seriously injured or worse at the hands of a speeding car trying to beat the light during rush hour, and they can't see any children because there's too many cars parked on the street. I look at this panel and only can presume that many of you are also parents of young children or once were. I have to ask you to sympathize with our neighborhood parents, as we are extremely concerned about our children's safety if this proposed apartment complex gets approved in our neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hands up. We'll line her up with this. Just hold that, wherever you feel comfortable. Sure.
Is that clear?
Think so.
Okay, great.
Problem, I'll let you know.
Great, thank you. So, yeah, thank you for your time and attention. As someone relatively new to Fairfield.
State your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Greg O'Melia, 90 South Pine Creek Road.
Thank you.
So as someone relatively new to Fairfield, I greatly appreciate your efforts as committed volunteers to the town and as leaders here on the zoning commission. Now, as an educator, I started my day reading a book titled Built to Last to 20 Eager Kindergartners at my school. And here I am concluding my evening with you and my neighbors in attendance. And to give a brief context from my perspective, I grew up in a city neighborhood in Boston, not much unlike the neighborhoods involved in this discussion. There was a major street like Post Road and some businesses on that street. There were no tall buildings that directly overlooked neighbors' backyards. And parking was not an issue because all the businesses had adequate parking. The housing density and size of the neighborhoods were very similar to those in question here. Some families parked their cars on the street, and we played all kinds of games on the street, stopping when a car needed to come by. In high school, my family moved to the small town of Chatham on Cape Cod, where my mother worked in the town offices and where 24 years ago, my wife and I purchased a home. Now, my profession as an educator took us to Winnetka and Lake Forest, Illinois, Charleston, South Carolina. And for the last 24 years, I've been the head of the Buckley School on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And through these experiences, personally and professionally, I've witnessed development of property from various perspectives as a homeowner, a concerned citizen, and head of school. Now, all of these locations, like Fairfield, were beautiful in their unique way and very disciplined in their approach to residential and business growth. I think it is why they are all still healthy and captivating to this day. Now, my most recent professional experience with balanced real estate development was at Buckley that involved our renovating academic buildings and building a new arts and sciences building in a residential neighborhood. This was a $70 million project, and among the many tasks, we had to work with our neighbors and appear before local community boards and be approved by various commissions. What guided us was our mission and values that included honor, truth, and the respect for others. As we balanced our goal with what fit into the neighborhood, all of our work was completed in the existing footprints. For the two contiguous townhouses that became our Arts and Sciences building, we kept the exterior similar to its predecessor, and we gutted the full inside of both townhouses to create 5 floors of learning space without increasing width, length, or height. Now back to Fairfield and this project. These neighborhoods that would be affected by this development are very special and deserve respect. They are filled with children and adults who play, bike, walk, and run. As an educator, I'd like to see children outside playing and spending less time on screens. There are already times when there are plenty of cars parked on the roads. Although we are a block, and maybe you could say block and a half away at 90 South Pine Creek with our back driveway on Lindbergh, the front and side of our house often has vehicles parked due to the funeral home, the hairstylist, and the active church. We actually like all that vibrancy, one of the reasons we purchased that home. And we recognized that when we purchased it, we were close to businesses that could change and develop. This is a normal part of progress. But progress and development should be balanced. I think the current zoning regulations with existing setbacks and 40 feet high are more than generous in this area that is bordering neighborhoods. I have a hard time envisioning the proposed 50-foot building with inadequate parking when you consider the potential number of residents and the workers and the customers in the various businesses. Now, every neighbor with whom I've spoke is not against development within current regulations. Speaking to our U.S. Postal Service professional, delivering mail on Saturday as I walked the streets made me think about how even daily deliveries to homes in the neighborhoods would be difficult. When looking for a balanced approach, I am heartened to know from town documents that your main focus of this commission is to, quote, ensure that the zoning regulations are strictly followed so that Fairfield remains a blend of commercial and residential zones, a town with a thriving commercial tax base that retains the small town feel that residents enjoy and that doesn't overly stress the school system, town services, and roadway. I do appeal to you to consider how this excessive exception, I consider it an excessive exception, to current regulations would feel if your children or your grandchildren lived in these neighborhoods. I thank you again for listening to my perspective and all your hard work, and I'm amazed at how many late nights you all do. So thank you.
Good evening.
Hello.
My name is Diane Saunders. I live at 162 Fairfield Place. I sent in a letter that I'm sure you've read, so I won't repeat all that, but I just wanted to take a minute to emphasize what I believe are key considerations on this application. I believe the main reason you should deny this application is because the requested zoning change is inappropriate at this time, and it sets a bad precedent for TPZ. Although this zoning change is proposed in the town's draft POCD, it has not yet been approved. There should be a compelling reason to prematurely make exceptions to the current regulations for just one party. And I see no compelling reason here. Secondly, the height and dense lot coverage are totally out of place in this location, contrasting with everything around it. The design is inconsistent with the character and charm of Fairfield, especially given its proximity to the Southport Village Historic District. Lastly, there have been 2 traffic studies submitted to your commission. There's apparently a protocol for how these are done, which inexplicably to me does not include the effect of all the additional traffic on all of the adjacent neighborhood streets. However, as a commission, I hope that you'll consider it your duty to consider this impact on the neighborhoods. There will be so many cars cutting through the neighborhood to avoid the congestion on the post road. And that happens already, so it can only get a lot worse with this development. I think it's obvious that this project will dramatically and negatively affect the amount of traffic in the two adjacent residential neighborhoods on streets that just simply aren't designed for this amount of traffic. And it will greatly disturb our quiet enjoyment of our homes and streets, in addition to creating an absolute parking nightmare. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello. Okay, I am Karen Hubrish. I am the owner of Gruel Britannia on the corner of Fairfield Place and Post Road. I've had my restaurant now for 6 years. And over 6 years, I'm there 24/7, and I see everything that really goes on in that little corner. The biggest issue, traffic, but parking. Yes, at this moment, I do rent parking space from Sunshine Development, which I did prior with when Bruce owned it. And Fairfield Place is a very, very narrow street. The number of times I've had customers get parking tickets because they're parked on the wrong side of the street, it's not very clearly marked, is an issue. The number of deliveries I get, and I think I have sent you all photographs of all the Amazon trucks, the UPS trucks, my linen company, my food companies, they park on Fairfield Place, basically in a no parking area, which would almost be directly where the exit from this new project would be. It's a very, very narrow road. I can't understand or get my head around with this project, with 40 apartments, and I think it's parking for 70 or whatever, a restaurant for 90 people and a coffee shop. Where are all these cars going to park? Because there is no parking. There is a little bit of parking on the Post Road, and there is nothing on Fairfield Place, just a few little spots. It's also very dangerous. I mean, trying to get out of Fairfield Place onto the Post Road, because I have customers parked outside my restaurant. It makes it very hard to see oncoming traffic. And it's been an issue, and it's just getting worse and worse. The project, I think it looks great. I just think, in my opinion, it's too big for the location. If it was across the road where the Porsche dealership was going to be, that would be perfect. But it's sort of squishing this massive thing into a very, very small neighborhood area. And I just can't see where everyone's going to park. I mean, is there a solution to this? And to me, it's a great concern. It is also a neighborhood. People come, they walk to my restaurant. Kids come, they go get candy from the restaurants without their parents. It's a very much a neighborhood thing. And I think that's going to be completely impacted by this, which is unfortunate. I'm totally into sort of development. I think the project could be great if it was scaled down. The parking is a nightmare. It's a nightmare now. And I see this on a daily basis. It's only going to be magnified. And all these metrics, oh yes, a UPS truck comes and spends whatever, 5 minutes. That's not how it works, because I see on a constant basis. I get a linen delivery, it might be there for 20 minutes. I've had Cisco deliveries, they've had to park on the opposite side of the street on the Post Road, and with hand trucks come across the Post Road because there's no parking. So I just would really hope you would consider this, because I think safety, parking are major, major issues here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Helpful for the microphone goes back.
I'm Dana Donnelly. I live at 50 Lindbergh Street. My husband is on the Zoom with our 2 boys at home. We are new faces to Fairfield. We relocated here from Stamford, specifically Harbor Point, 2 months ago, to our first home. And it's what my 4-year-old son has for years been referring to his neighborhood house. And for those of you familiar with Harbor Point, it's a big city feel. We've really moved up here for this small town community. And when we made the purchase of our house, unfortunately, we weren't aware of the gravity of this project. And so in good faith, we are hoping that this zoning commission will uphold the current zoning regulations of the current area. This will ensure the safety of my two boys. I have a few photos. I think this speaks to a little bit of Tom mentioning. So my 4-year-old on skateboard, roller skates, my 2-year-old on a bike. Obviously, you know, more photos of them. They're thrilled to be able to ride their bikes, roller skates, scooters, with parental supervision in the neighborhood. However, you will note there are not sufficient sidewalks. So the children are really in the streets, and I've lived here for now about 2 months, and I can already see that in the middle of the winter. So I can only imagine how it's going to continue in the summertime. I'm hopeful that you all taking the time to be a part of this volunteer commission, along with the Vision Zero policy, will help protect us and the traffic and parking problem that is already in existence in this area. I do worry without the adequate parking in front of specifically my home at 50 Lindbergh Street, that if cars are parking there and my kids are in the driveway, that there could be, I am quite scared about, potential accidents happening. And I think the overflow of Amazon trucks, of Uber deliveries, of, apartment and restaurant guest parking, is a major concern for me. So with all respect, I hope that you'll take my, my recent experience here into account, and obviously, taking into account whether you have young children of your own that or nieces or nephews that you would also hope can be kept safe through this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Evening.
Just
Hold
hold
it up to your chin area that way.
Good evening. My name is Clarissa Porter. I live at 37 Fairfield Place, which is a property that will be directly abutting the development. So one of the plots involved in the development is 29 Fairfield Place, and I live right next door to that at 37 Fairfield Place. I just wanted to mention some of the more technical issues that I have a concern about, and also my belief that the optimal planning should involve attention to existing Fairfield zoning regulations, as well as Connecticut state statutory law. So my presentation might go a little on the technical side here. First of all, as many of you all are undoubtedly aware, the zoning regulations for that area, so for the residential area, is 2.5 stories or 32 feet, whichever is less. And I'm pulling that from Fairfield zoning regulations found on page 21. So in order to achieve their increased desired height of 50 feet, the developers would have to obtain a change to the underlying zoning map, which would enable them to go up from 40 to approximately 50 feet. And in addition to the 50 feet, because of, if you look at some of the accompanied desired text amendments, the protrusion from the roof, the protrusions that they're seeking would allow them a protrusion up to 17 feet. So it's not just a flat roof. They want a deck on the roof. And again, I'm repeating myself with elevator protrusion. So I would argue that the planned development is too architecturally anonymous and that its height and design are not in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood. And I certainly do appreciate the developer's willingness to remove the back balconies off of their original plans. And I also greatly appreciate the setback between the property line that I share with 29 Fairfield Place. I do acknowledge that and appreciate that. However, I do think that the charm and the character and the visual aesthetic of the surrounding neighborhood could be better preserved. And again, getting technical, section 12.0 of the Fairfield zoning regs pertains to designed business districts, specifically 12.10.4 states all spaces, structures, and related site improvements that are visible to the public from public roadways are designed to add to the visual amenities of the districts. To the color, size, height, proportion of openings, roof treatments, and building materials be evaluated for compatibility with the local architectural character. Furthermore, as I understand it, this development requires a special permit under Fairfield's zoning regulations. Accordingly, regulations under section 25.0 apply, and section 25.7.7 explicitly indicates the development shown on site and the architectural plans shall be of such a character as to harmonize with the neighborhood to accomplish a transition in character between areas of unlike character to protect property values in the neighborhood, to preserve and enhance the appearance and beauty of the community, and to avoid undue traffic congestion. Furthermore, as you all are very well aware, section 8-3B of the Connecticut General Statutes says in pertinent part that such regulations and boundaries, and I'm referring to their requested change to the underlying zoning map here.
Can I make one suggestion? It's up to you. This is your time. Is it possible, because I can see quite a few pages there and you are going technical, which is fine. Is it possible maybe to submit your written statement for us so we can review it, especially be able to refer back to it?
Yes.
Maybe hit some highlights there?
Yes, I will do that.
That's
But I do want to, I agree with you and I appreciate your observation. I do feel very strongly.
It's your time.
Yes, about reiterating section 8.3B of the Connecticut General Statutes.
Why don't you do that?
Yeah,
I just want to make a
I will
suggestion.
do that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's your time, but
She has a right to speak because her house is the most impacted on this
well,
property.
maybe I should speak up when I say, ma'am, I'll say it again so the whole room can hear me. This is your time to speak. I see a lengthy written statement, which is great. I assume it's very technical because it
It
has been
is,
so
yeah.
far. It would be helpful to the commission to submit that. We can refer back to it. And maybe, because every time anybody submits anything in writing, email, whatever, it's the same way as if it's presented, and it's a lot of ways easier for us to go back to it. So it might be easier to do that and hit some highlights.
I will do that.
But it is your time. I'm
Okay.
just making a suggestion.
No worries, and I anticipated that remark, but I really feel it's very important to reiterate 8-3B of the Connecticut General Statutes, which indicates in pertinent part again, I'm repeating myself, pertaining to their desire to change the underlining zoning map, such regulations and boundaries shall be established, changed, or repealed only by the majority vote of the members of the zoning commission, except as otherwise provided in this chapter. Okay, we've successfully put in the petition that forces the supermajority, so now it's 5-2. But back to my point, in making its decision, the commission shall take into consideration the plan of conservation and development prepared pursuant to 8-23 and shall state on the records its findings on consistency of the proposed establishment, change or repeal of such regulations and boundaries with such plan. So my understanding is that the 2016 POCD is currently the legal POCD. So in conformity with this law, it's my understanding that the observations have to be consonant with the 2016 POCD. And to that, and many of those can be found, many relevant ones can be found on pages 71 through 72 of that POCD, particularly under section 3.2, which goes through all the aesthetic elements, which I will not go through. But I just really want to make that observation that looking ahead to the 2024 draft, that's not my understanding of the Connecticut statutory law. So, and just a really quick observation there, and again, it'll be in this document. The 2016 POCD has a section, subsection 3.2.17, found on page 72, that says emphasize preservation of historic buildings and grounds. Well, I'm bringing that up because my house directly sharing a borderline with them is an historic Victorian house in the Queen Anne style. The property records in Fairfield dated from 1910, but I've had an opinion that indicates that it may have been built even earlier in 1885. I've spent a great deal of money on this home. It's the exterior is top-notch condition. It's surrounded by a very well kept up Walpole fence. And I really think that not being careful of Victorian and colonial legacy homes is a diminishment to our town. The other very technical point I do want to make is that as from what I understand from their submitted plans, a very beautiful old and sizable maple tree will be eliminated from one of the plots, and somebody might say, well, who cares? Well, here it is. It's right in the regs pertaining to a special permit, which I understand they will need. A special permit requires adherence to section 25.0 and section 25.2.2a requires the submission of a landscape plan, which includes plans for, I won't read the whole thing. Well, yes, I will. The location and description of trees of notable size, rarity, or aesthetic value, including species and diameter at breast height, and plans to protect and preserve such trees during and after construction. A tree of notable size means any tree with a diameter greater than 16 inches at breast height. This one measures 121 inches at breast height and is at the very least 50 feet high. I've lived on my property over 30 years, and this tree was substantially grown when I moved there, so it must be decades old. I won't go into continued technicalities. I will say that I have various. One point I would like to make is that the TOD adopted by the town of Fairfield in 2019 does not, it is not stating that it is appropriate to use the figure of 1.25 spaces per unit. It's merely saying that information should be collected to determine whether it may be. If there has been no such study, then how can this number of only 50 parking spaces for 40 units be determined to be adequate? And the quote that's the authority for my statement is found on page 40 of the TOD, if you want to corroborate that. And the last thing I don't want to take up too much time. The last thing I want to mention is it is my understanding that the Connecticut Department of Transportation considers the average car 7.5 feet from mirror to mirror. And therefore it permits parking only in shoulders on its roads that are 8 feet wide. Well, I have been informed that the parking on the shoulders between Sasko Hill Road and Lindbergh Place is not legal because the shoulder is not 8 feet wide. So number one, many of the cars are not parking legally there now. So considering that an option for overflow parking from a development is not a responsible thing to do. And furthermore, as we all know, there's going to be a traffic diet installed in there where they'll be working, you know, repaving the roads, working on sidewalks, etc. And I've been informed that it is not necessarily true that there'll be any parallel parking there at all. So then if that's the case, where are the cars gonna go for Gruel and the development? Many of them are gonna end up seeking parking on Fairfield Place, and the road between Overhill and Fairfield Place is extremely narrow. I've put in 4 measurements for you in here, but if you can imagine, if we can borrow the if you borrow that 8-foot requirement after you read the statistics I have, I can't imagine that you can think that there's going to be maneuverability down that end of Fairfield Place. Thank you very much for your time. Yes,
Thank you. I know, did you send in that packet?
I was just gonna.
Okay. Can you also email it to the commission
Can I
too?
ask her a question about that tree?
We can scan it and distribute it.
Okay.
Ma'am, can I ask you a
Yes,
question about
certainly, yeah.
the tree you're talking about? Is that the one directly behind 29? It's next to like a pine tree.
It's a cedar tree, a little.
It's next to the cedar trees.
Somewhat.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairperson Newman and fellow commissioners. My name is Beth Santa, and I live at 10 Overhill Road, where I've been a resident of Fairfield for 14 years now. I'm within the 500-foot radius of the proposed project. I live there with my husband, 2 teenage girls, black lab, and 2 rabbits. First of all, I'm very grateful to the commission for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. And I want to thank you for your dedication and countless volunteer hours that you've given to Fairfield's residents, especially of late, to preserve and enhance our town. Let me be clear. I am not opposed to development of this site. I am here in front of you this evening to voice my concerns about the application because it is grossly inconsistent with existing zoning regulations, and if approved, will pose a significant safety hazard to our neighborhood due to excess on-street parking and increased cut-through traffic. Of specific concern to me is the preservation of our narrow neighborhood streets. This sentiment is also shared by our town leadership. As recently as January 14th, 2 weeks ago, in 2025, Selectman Bill Gerber signed a request for proposal for the Fairfield Safe Streets and Roads for All Safety Action Plan. In this RFP, he states, First Selectman Bill Gerber committed to the town, to the Fairfield, to eliminating fatalities and serious injuries on the town streets by 2034. Unfortunately, the town has experienced at least 3 pedestrian deaths from being struck by cars within the last 3 years. One of these fatalities occurred on May 17th, 2023, in the parking lot of 2150 Post Road, the building commonly referred to as the Wedding Cake Building, diagonally across the street from the proposed development. This incident occurred at 9:30, about around 9:18 in the morning. I mean no disrespect by bringing up these fatalities. I mention them because the town is taking action to address these incidents and improve the safety of our streets with its Vision Zero pledge, commitment to Safe Streets initiative, and securing a $350,000 grant to develop the Fairfield Safe Streets and Roads for All Safety Action Plan. Our safety concerns are not punitive. They are real and evidence-based. As highlighted in the report prepared by professional licensed engineer Devin Santa, the applicant proposed zoning changes to section 28.6.1 and section 28.6.12 result in a parking shortfall at a minimum of 56 spaces to 130
basis per the existing town of Fairfield's own zoning regulations. This lack of parking on the development site will result in dangerous increase of on-street parking on existing roads which are too narrow to accommodate this increase. Even the applicant openly acknowledges parking shortfall during the January 9th, 2024 pre-application meeting with regards to this development. Mr. Andre's response when the commission said that they foresaw issues with overflow parking was, and I quote, the timestamp is 48:59 for reference. We estimate there will be about 20 off-street parking there on Post Road, Fairfield Place, and Lindbergh. By his own admission, he needs at least 20 additional parking spaces, a 22% increase in parking capacity to accommodate the parking demand of this development. Under zoning regulations 12.10.3, the applicant shall submit a parking study indicating parking demand. There has been no study submitted. Why? Because we know, and the applicant knows, this development will cause on-street parking. These narrow streets ranging from a minimum of 22 feet to 33 feet wide do not meet the required design criteria for on-street parking. The Fairfield Police Department recognizes that this excessive on-street parking is a hazard in this neighborhood as well. Each year prior to the Memorial Day Parade, no on-street parking signs are placed on Fairfield Place, Lindbergh, and Northfield to keep these roads safe and avoid the hazard of excess on-street parking. Forcing pedestrians to walk in the middle of a street due to excess on-street parking seems entirely contradictory to Fairfield's commitment to safe streets and roads for all. Where there is an effort to suggest that many of the patrons of this development will walk, bike, or use public transport while living or visiting this new development, the reality is the town of Fairfield is a car-dependent town. The site is located 1 mile from the train station and downtown public parking areas. We live in New England, which as the last 2 weeks weather showed with below freezing temps and snowfall is not conducive to walking all months of the year. How many town residents in attendance at this meeting this evening biked, Ubered, or took public transportation to get here? The idea that this development will result in needing fewer parking spaces is unfounded. Finally, I am saddened that the developers, both Fairfield residents, are unwilling to offer the town in this neighborhood a development within the existing zoning regulations. This project, if developed following the existing regulations, would be a great asset to the neighborhood. Instead, they are proposing a massive development, which by their own admission, they are proposing will result in 20 parked cars on our narrow streets, and they don't care. They have been unwilling to entertain any type of scaled down version, signaling maximizing profits is their one and only priority. What is the compelling reason to turn a blind eye to these safety concerns? If there is an accident or fatality caused on these neighborhood streets as a result of on-street parking, a problem created by this development if approved by the commission, who owns this liability when parking shortfalls and safety concerns have been documented during public hearing by licensed professionals, legal counsel, and neighborhood residents? What is the compelling reason to ignore existing zoning regulations? Because the developer may threaten an 830G application or wants what they want to maximize their ROI? The existing rules are in effect to protect Fairfield from this development. That is detrimental to the town and its residents, and they work. I am very grateful for the work of this commission, and I regret having to come before you to request that the zoning regulations of the town once again be upheld to preserve our wonderful neighborhood. I strongly urge you to reject this proposal, which jeopardizes the town's commitment to Fairfield State safe streets and roads for all. Thank you very much for your time. Good evening.
Susan Seeth. I live at 186 Fairfield Place. I've lived there for 11 years. I adore my neighborhood. I bought my home because of this and its convenient location. I don't have young children anymore, but our neighborhood is full of them. They gather and play outside on their front yards and in the streets. This is what this neighborhood is about. Children playing, families walking dogs and biking. The extra traffic and excess overage of needed parking for cars that won't fit in the allotted spaces of the new development will create an extremely dangerous situation. Where are all these cars going to go? Where are they gonna park? And if this monstrosity is allowed to be built as proposed, it will forever change the flavor and charm of our neighborhood, but also the current nature of the downtown Fairfield. It will overshadow so much. The end of Fairfield Place is already congested with cars that overflow from Gruel Britannia lot. And when cars are parked on both sides of the street, you can barely get by, and forget trying to pull out of the end of the street onto the post road. It is literally taking your life into your own hands and the life of others. It's already a very dangerous situation. Please, let's not make it worse. I am not opposed to new development or 830G, and I say build something in that space. But please, I beg you, do not allow the current zoning laws to be changed so this development can forever ruin what we all love. There is something called overdevelopment, and I believe that this is what will happen if this building is allowed as proposed. The size of the building does not belong on that property. It's just not appropriate. Zoning regulations were put into place for a reason. Let's not forget those reasons. And I also have another question that came up as I was listening to the previous application with storm drainage. Is that appropriate? Is the current proposal, does it have the appropriate storm drainage? Do we know? Because I did a tiny renovation on my house. I raised the roof line. I bumped out like 5 feet over an existing roof. I didn't add any coverage. Fairfield made me dig up my entire front lawn and put in a storm drain for like adding 50 square feet to my house. Where is the storm drain and where's the storm water going from this development? Do we have answers to that?
We will. I think it was addressed at the first presentation, they're not here right now, but during the rebuttal, I will ask them to kind of go through that over again.
There's no way in, you know what I want to say, that it's appropriate for that site. There's just no way. The building is too big. I had to do, my entire front lawn was dug up. And I have a tiny little house. Like it just, I don't get it. I don't get it. Anyway, thank you for your time and your commitment to this. I know you spend a lot of time here and we do appreciate that. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi. My name's Adam Goodman. I live on 87 Sasco Hill Road on the corner of Sasco Hill and Overhill. And I'm going to try not to beat a dead horse. I know a lot of people here are talking about the same things. And I know when we first met with the developer, we highlighted sort of 3 main points, or I did, sorry. When I spoke to them, I said, parking is going to be an issue, traffic's going to be an issue, and safety, the neighborhood safety is going to be an issue. And so I might have a slightly different perspective than I think a lot of the other speakers. When my wife and we moved to the neighborhood 10 years ago, we could not wait for the area to be an extension of downtown. We saw the exide, we saw the piles of soil. We were like, when are those piles of soil going to disappear? We can't wait for the property to be remediated and have this downtown vibrancy extended westerly to our neighborhood. You know, we always wanted to be able to walk down the street and take our kids to an ice cream parlor, to be able to go shopping. You know, maybe even have a men's clothing store for once. That would be wonderful. So we were pretty psyched when we first read this proposal. You know, unlike others, I don't mind the looks as much as others. You know, yeah, it could fit into the character of the neighborhood more, like One Sasco Hill, but at least doesn't look like an alien landed on the site, like the one, as you know. And so I love the idea of restaurants and retail, like I'm saying. It was just that when you got into the details and you saw that it was 40 units with not much parking and restaurant and coffee store and a retail place, I just didn't understand how they were going to accommodate the parking. And so is it reasonable to have only 40 spots for residences to park when there's 50 residents? Oh, sorry, there's 40 residential units and 50 spots. So is that reasonable? Is it reasonable for only 15 spots to exist for the restaurant, coffee store and retail place. I'm just want to be reasonable here. And it was enlightening to hear from the Grill Britannia owner to hear about their issues and what they see. And I see it every day. There's 15 to 25 cars parked there, but their lot's only 10 cars. So that's an overflow of 15 spots. Yes, they are renting 5 spots from their Sunshine Development spot. But obviously those cars have to go somewhere else. So they're going to park on Fairfield Place. They're going to park on Post Road. We know that. We see it every day. We also know that Martel and Geronimo, those lots are pretty big, right? Like decent sized lots. And if you go to dinner, they're filled every single night. So if you have a restaurant at this proposed development, how can you have only 7 spots for that restaurant when we know these large spots at Martel and Geronimo are full? Those 7 spots will likely be used purely for the restaurant staff. So, you know, you've heard about Fairfield Place and how narrow it is. You know, it's not wide enough to support 2-way traffic if there's cars parked on the street. So where is everyone supposed to park? I know this is sort of the question that everybody keeps asking. And this question, I think, exposes a bigger issue, and that is with the POCD. You're talking about extending the POCD. I know we're not talking about that now. I'm just going to say this one little bit. We are talking about expanding it all the way to the Mill River. I think that this development exposes the parking situation. And the fact that we don't have a town commission parking study, how can you extend that downtown zoning to this area without an understanding of how big of a change this would be for our neighborhood? As a side, I listened to the POC discussion yesterday, all hours. And I'm asking, don't eliminate the parking in our neighborhood. I know there was talks how community theater and Old Post Tavern don't need their separate parking lots. There's tons of parking in downtown. We know that. There's no parking here. And so I think the other issue is safety. We're already seeing people that are patronizing Grill Britannia. They're already parking at the intersection of Overhill and Fairfield Place, which is a block away. They're already going down there. I would contend that we already have a dangerous situation here. Walking down Fairfield Place isn't safe. There's no sidewalks. Like I said, if there's cars parked on one side, you're walking in the middle of the road essentially. And so I want to talk specifically about a safety issue that I encounter every time I walk the dog, which is every day, multiple times a day. I walk by Grill Britannia every day. And there's a line of sight issue there. Like I said, there's 10 spots. There's oftentimes 25 cars parked at Grill Britannia. So where they park in Fairfield Place. Do they follow the no parking signs? Not always. We heard it from the owner of Grill Britannia. Where else do they park? They park on Post Road. I've even seen cars park blocking the curb cut halfway. So what happens when you're walking down the sidewalk, cars are turning right into that parking lot and they don't see you. So several times recently, I've had to scurry out of the way with my dog to avoid from being hit. There's already a safety issue there. I was shocked when I heard the developer's traffic engineer talk about how there would be no difference in traffic. I mean, let's get real here. We know that our streets are cut through streets. They already are. We've accepted that. I'm not even going to focus too much on traffic here, but to say there's not going to be any increase in traffic in our neighborhood was a little shocking. We know when Post Road is jammed up, they go Overhill, they go Northfield and Southfield. It's, you know, as some people say, we knew that when we bought these places. But what do you think will happen when cars are parked on the street everywhere and people are racing, cutting through these streets? I think this is a dangerous and untenable situation that will cause injuries or worse. I'm concerned there'll be gridlock on Fairfield Place. Buses won't be able to get through. Ambulances won't be able to get through. People are going to get hurt. I'm concerned about it. There's no sidewalks. This is a major issue at Fairfield Place. So what's the solution here? I'm probably in the minority here. I know Exide's not for sale. I would love for the town to buy part of Exide and build a parking garage. That would solve all of the POCD issues of extending the downtown area here. We'd have parking. We don't really have a lot of parking here. There's no parking on Post Road, on the far side of Post Road. There's no parking once the road diet goes into effect. I don't think there's parking on the south side of Post Road either. So that's where primarily a lot of people park at this point. I'm sort of joking about the municipal lot, but I think you get my point. What about one-way roads or no left turns? And I just want to point you to the Sportsplex. Every day I drive south on North Pine Creek. says no left turn into the sportsplex. It's ridiculous. Come on, everyone turns left into there. What about the bank? When you're on South Pine Creek and you turn into the bank, no one wants to go into that parking lot in the bank because it is so tight. And you are going to rub your car up against the side. If you go underneath and you park under 1 Sasko Hill, I challenge you to try that. You won't want to go there again, and you will make the left when it says no left turn. So I'm worried that if the solution is to make a one-way road there or no left turn, that people will do it anyway. They're going to ignore it. They already ignore it, and I think that's a problem for Sportplex and other places. The only reasonable solution, I think, is to downsize the development. Put something in that fits into the neighborhood and works with the existing infrastructure. I understand that the applicant has applied for 8-30G. That's his right. I totally get that. I guess I just would like to ask for a reasonable structure to be proposed, a reasonable number of housing units. Is 60 units reasonable? I'm not sure. I would contend that a lot of the same issues that I brought up, these same dangerous situations would exist with an overdeveloped 8-30G building as well, without appropriate parking. So if the developer is denied and they go forward with an 8-30G, I'm asking them to be reasonable, help our neighborhood be safe, provide sufficient on-site parking of the place so that you don't have these other issues in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Tom Donegan, and I live at 49 Lindbergh Court with my wife and 3 young children. I want to reiterate all the thanks that has come out this evening for everyone on this commission. It's a thankless job, and you guys are here a lot, so I appreciate everything that you do. I'm here to share my concerns about the proposed development at 2179, 2199 Post Road, and 29 Fairfield Place by Sunshine Acquisition Group. I appreciate the town's vision for a more walkable and urban downtown. This proposal does not adequately address the practical realities of how Fairfield residents live, move, and park. It risks burdening both residents and visitors while compromising safety and accessibility in our neighborhood. Walking is important to my family. We moved here from Brooklyn with my wife and I were eager to raise our children in a community that values walking to local amenities. I frequently walk to the French Bakery, which is affectionately known in our house as the Donut Shop. We walk to Hemlock Hardware. We walk to Dairy Queen with a wagon behind us. So I appreciate the sentiment to walk. However, Fairfield is a suburban town, not an urban city with dense infrastructure. It relies on a balanced mix of walking and driving. National statistics show that the average American walks about 4,000 to 5,000 steps daily, which is roughly 1.5 to 2 miles, while the CDC recommends 7,000 to 8,000 steps for health. A local survey I conducted with my neighbors found residents average about 7,500 steps daily, demonstrating a healthy lifestyle, but showing that walking here is more for leisure or fitness, not a primary mode of transportation. For dining and shopping, most people are unlikely to walk more than a half mile, which is 1,000 steps, especially during bad weather or at night. The closest parking lot to this proposed development is almost a mile away, far beyond what most consider walkable. This disconnect highlights the need for sufficient on-site parking. In conversations with neighbors, 3 key concerns consistently came up. While walking is valued, most residents rely on cars for practical reasons, particularly in the evening or during inclement weather. Over 75% of survey residents said that they would not walk more than a half mile from parking to their destination, emphasizing convenience and safety. Families with children, like mine, stress the importance of reliable parking near their homes and businesses to ensure safety and ease of movement. The Sunshine proposal fails to account for these lived realities. It assumes a level of walkability that simply doesn't exist in this area, especially with the nearest parking lot almost a mile away. The Sunshine application proposes only 71 parking spaces, which is far below what is needed for the development of this size. For example, only 7 spaces are designated for a restaurant with 90 seats. This glaring deficiency ensures overflow parking onto nearby streets like Lindbergh and Fairfield Place. At the previous meeting, Devin Santa, a licensed engineer, thoroughly outlined the road and parking concerns associated with this proposal. He emphasized the lack of sufficient off-street parking and detailed how the overflow would further burden nearby streets, which are already congested. Lindbergh Street, in particular, faces existing challenges from parking demanded by the repair shop, and Lindbergh Court has the parking for the church. Additionally, Fairfield Place deals with all of the parking associated with Grove Britannia. Adding additional vehicles would make two-way traffic nearly impossible and exacerbate safety and accessibility issues in the neighborhood. The proposal funnels additional traffic through Lindbergh Street and Fairfield Place, both of which are already overburdened. Lindbergh is a frequent cut-through for speeding vehicles, creating unsafe conditions for pedestrians and residents. Multiple videos have been submitted showing instances where people were almost hit by speeding cars. As a parent of 3 young children, all under the age of 9, these safety concerns are personal. Increased traffic and parking overflow from this development will heighten these risks, making it unsafe for children to play outside or even walk around their own neighborhood. Fairfield's charm lies in its balance between suburban comfort and urban accessibility. The Sunshine proposal disrupts this balance. It introduces a large, dense structure with insufficient parking, relying on a walkability model that does not reflect Fairfield's current layout or lifestyle. Without enough parking, this project will increase congestion, frustrate residents, and ultimately detract from the urban vibrancy it hopes to achieve. If the town genuinely wants a more walkable downtown, it must provide the infrastructure to support it, starting with adequate parking. This proposal falls short of that goal and will create long-term issues that ripple through our streets and neighborhoods, making life more difficult and less safe for families like mine. I urge the Commission to reject this application in its current form and demand a revised proposal that better integrates the needs of the community. Thank you for your time and consideration. We appreciate everything you do.
Yeah, I have a question. I was very interested in what you said about half a mile, which is 1,000 steps. Is there a source for that? I'm trying to Google it. I can't find it.
Well, I can submit
it's in your
something.
paperwork?
Yeah, I can submit something that
Yeah.
will have a source for that, yeah.
I know most people will drive around for half an hour to find a space in front of the building, but I'm sure other people prefer to walk a short distance.
Right, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Marie Malo, and I live at 62 Lindbergh Court. There's a letter in the public record. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
There's a letter in the public record which reflects the various concerns I have with this development, which are similar to many of the issues already discussed this evening. So I will do my best not to be repetitive. The one specific issue I'd like to focus on, which I also raised during a recent POCD public hearing, is that of the longstanding traffic issue, which exists in the Post Road corridor, traveling from Southport eastward past this proposed development and into Fairfield Center. I'm a 30+ year Fairfield resident, and this traffic issue has existed for as long as I can remember. I submitted into the record yesterday and would like to play for you a video we took recently on a Friday afternoon.
Bergen, do you have that video? Put it on the screen then.
Okay.
That's okay with you.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
So I just,
No worries.
I have to share it first and then I can hopefully play it. Hopefully it'll work.
Thank you, Ms. Hargan.
That's it. So we recently took this video on a Friday afternoon during peak hours.
Let's identify the streets just so.
Yes, I'm sorry. It started off on Lindbergh Street, took a left onto Post Road. So the video is
surrounding the development, goes completely around the development, and now this is the post road just past the
I thought there
development.
was no parking on the post. Are those cars
There,
parked?
there really, there's not supposed to be parking on the post road. It's a
this in
great
front of-
observation.
Is this in front of, where?
Yeah, that's in front of Gruel Britannia, and there's a car parked there. There's not supposed to be parking on the post road. So it is what it is.
The road
This is
diet
what
is not gonna
happens.
Change that to make it, I thought the road diet would reduce lanes to allow parking.
I have no idea.
Okay.
So back to the video. We took it recently on a Friday afternoon, and I believe this makes the strongest case for the issue versus anything I might convey in words. While you watch, I'll add that I struggle to reconcile the developer's traffic study, which suggests that the proposed development with a restaurant and coffee shop in the middle of this corridor will have no significant impact to travel levels with what I know to be the existing traffic patterns. I struggle to reconcile that. The report does not address or consider the corridor bottleneck that occurs more frequently than we care to admit. The SLR report states that there are quote unquote 65 total vehicle trips expected in the development during afternoon peak hours. So that's, a car coming in and a car going out, 65 in total during afternoon peak hours. I can only imagine the backup on Fairfield Place and Lindbergh Street as these cars wait to try and make a right or left turn onto the post road in light of all of the traffic that we see in this video. I just can't imagine 65 trips in and out of the development faced with this traffic jam. It just doesn't work. Now, I don't have engineering credentials to back up my thesis, but from a practical perspective, having lived here for 30 plus years, it stands to reason that the backups will worsen, the congestion will be amplified, and the surrounding neighborhoods will bear the brunt of it. How do we move forward with a development of this magnitude and a concept of changing DCD to CDBC without first addressing this traffic issue? Also, what is not visible from the video are the motor vehicles, and I think this was mentioned previously, the motor vehicles that detour through the surrounding neighborhoods. When you get stuck in that traffic, frequently the cars detour through our surrounding neighborhoods: Sasko, Overhill, Northfield, Southfield, Lindbergh, and Fairfield Place. That's the workaround to get through that traffic. Our neighborhood streets are used as cut-throughs with people speeding, trying to make up time, having been stuck in the traffic, causing dangerous and unsafe conditions for all involved, including, most importantly, the children of this community. Further, this whole situation is a direct contravention to what is trying to be achieved via the town's Complete Streets and Vision Zero initiatives. My request this evening is that the Post Road corridor traffic patterns be a top priority for the commission as it relates both to the draft POCD as well as the proposed development. This area is not ready for a zone change until traffic patterns are studied and this issue is addressed. And by extension, for the same reasons, an isolated zone change for Sunshine Development should not be granted. I implore the commission to engage a town-sponsored traffic study before any meaningful zoning changes are made to this area, either via the POCD or as a one-off Sunshine Development accommodation. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Please.
What is the date and time of that video?
It's Friday, November 8th. And it was 5 p.m.
And what was the stretch of the post road? It looked like it was near in front of what used to be the.
Yeah.
So it started at
Lindbergh.
Lindbergh is the one closest to the wedding cake building?
Correct.
Okay.
So, yeah, it started on Lindbergh Street, took a left on the post road.
Okay.
So surrounding the proposed development, right?
Was that
Just the-
walking or driving? You were obviously walking.
Walking.
So it went through there and it passed Fairfield Place and went, because the old Hyundai dealer is beyond Fairfield Place, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that's where it ended. It's like a
Yeah.
2-minute video.
It's a 2-minute video. I have a 9-minute video at home that I could submit to the record that went completely down the post road into, almost into Southport.
That's your decision, if you want to submit it or not.
Yeah, it's the
Possibly
long
email a
form,
9-minute video?
it's the long form video and I will submit it.
Is there, can that be done by email?
Or flash drive.
Yeah. I'll do the same.
Flash drive, sorry. So
Flash
you
drive.
can upload it like you did the other one.
There's a Dropbox.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's do. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Mary Halloran. I'm a 30-year resident of Lindbergh Court. The house when I was a young lady and now I'm not. And I wanted to say first that nobody's objecting to having something built on.
I'm sorry, just for everybody else.
I'm sorry, nobody's objecting to have something built on that property. It really needs something, but it needs something that's better in keeping with the neighborhood. It's important that any project that is built there upholds the safety and integrity of the neighborhood. This proposal is requesting significant zoning changes that affect not only our neighborhood, but the text amendments will affect the whole town. Very important to think about. A 50-foot, 40-unit building is not suitable for our neighborhood. It's all small-scale family homes. It exceeds the current zoning regulations as well as trying to stretch them. The size and structure and limited parking are not allowed. Parking is a huge issue. A 90-person restaurant was going to need one space per 40 square feet. We figure that's 40 spaces are needed for the restaurant alone, according to the current zoning laws, which is kind of way more than what's being offered. The design is just too massive for the space. The other commercial buildings along the road, Sasco Place and such, are more in keeping with the beachy and New England style of the neighborhood that Clarissa well explained when she did the zoning regulations. Traffic and the parking congestion is going to inhibit safety. Maureen went through that beautifully. I can skip that. The overflow parking, huge issue. Everybody saw Devin's chart. The parking with all of the cars in it will go all the way up to all the way up to like practically Northfield. Not going to work. The way the building is built, there are balconies and terraces overlooking parts of yards. I mean, that's a privacy issue for the existing residents, and it's just not fair to like take away somebody's private enjoyment of their property with a terrace overhanging. The residents don't support the massive development, and we're here. We've been here for a long time. The zoning regulations were meant to protect us. And we've had to like hire lawyers and traffic experts at considerable expense. And it's just going to go on, I think. We're prepared for that, by the way. We have a good group and I think everybody's willing to chip in. So that's what I'd like to say. Just please think about our neighborhood and don't let the economic development come at the expense of our neighborhood.
Thank you. Evening.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Stevenson. I recently moved to 69 Lindbergh Court in August of last year. I'm also speaking to you on behalf of my wife, who's at home taking care of our 3-month-old child. We moved to this neighborhood because we felt an immediate sense of community when visiting. We saw families out front of their houses chatting, kids riding their bikes and playing soccer, or as I like to call it, football normally. We knew that this is where we wanted to live and grow our family. To get straight to the point, and there's going to be some repetition still of what you've heard today, but I think that's the nature of these meetings. I'm here today to urge you to reject the development as it stands, until, at a minimum, it is revised to meet current zoning regulations. In turn, I really urge you to use this development as a clear case study, showing why the proposed rezoning in the POCD simply won't work as it is currently designed, as it would lead to developments that are clearly much too large for residential neighborhoods like ours to safely accommodate. As highlighted in the previous meetings and by my neighbors here today, a development of this size would have numerous negative impacts on our community. Beyond simply being a nuisance or an eyesore, this neighborhood is composed of modest single-family homes, and this building would tower over the adjacent homes, changing the face of the neighborhood and opening up other similar, heavily sought-after, family-friendly neighborhoods in Fairfield to similar developments. There's a reason the current zoning regulations exist, is to prevent this type of size mismatch between large developments and single-family homes. Additionally, and most importantly, I won't go into the details as been discussed many times today, the development under the proposed commercial zoning and with their numerous additional amendments would increase traffic and dramatically increase parking congestion to dangerous levels. As highlighted so clearly in the last meeting by Devin Santa, people are already speeding along our street daily, cutting the corner on Lindbergh, using our driveway multiple times a day to turn around abruptly. I have no idea why people turn down that street just to turn around, but people are already, I believe there was footage that was shared with you via email of just happened to be talking with a neighbor and someone almost got hit while walking their dog because a couple of cars parked on our street. Suddenly everyone has to walk out onto the street. People are speeding. It is already a dangerous scenario. Our neighborhood doesn't have the public parking spaces like you have downtown. It doesn't have the lit crosswalks. It doesn't have the the appropriate sidewalks. And so really trying to compare what's this area to the downtown zoning situation is a complete mismatch. I know a lot of work has gone into the POCD and I really appreciate that. I know it's not easy. When I found out that they were all volunteers, I was quite shocked, to be honest. But until it has been further revised and finalized, I really implore you to hold these developers accountable to the current zoning regulations once again, and not use our neighborhood as a testing ground to see how big of a building that they can squeeze into that small and already congested section of Post Road. Ultimately, I ask you to use simple reasoning and ask yourselves, does a building like this even remotely belong in a neighborhood like ours? You know what the neighborhood looks like, I believe, most of you. To me, it doesn't make sense. And really ask yourself too, how would you feel if in your neighborhood a development like this was being in the current situation? We do not live in the gateway to Fairfield, as the developer liked to mention. We live in a residential neighborhood full of families with young children, such as myself, such as my family, I should say. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jim Farrell. I'm on 25 Overhill Road in Fairfield. Lifelong resident of Fairfield. Lived on Overhill for 33 years. So been there and seen the turn of kids and in the growing community. I just wanted to quickly add that there are no sidewalks on any of those roads. So we talk a lot about Fairfield Place, but Overhill doesn't have it, Northfield doesn't have it, Southfield doesn't have it. And that's where there's tons of strollers, tons of kids. When the buses drop the kids off, they run down the street. They run across yards, they run down the streets. It's great to see, but it's a huge safety hazard. And of course, Waze routes everyone down these roads too. So that complicates it. And then just sort of just to echo, emergency vehicles down Fairfield Place. I can't imagine a fire truck going down that route, or maybe making a different decision because they don't think they can get down there and causing other potential liability issues. So
Can I ask him a question? One of the other neighbors that talked said there's not enough sidewalks. Are you saying there's no sidewalks?
there's no sidewalks on Overhill. There's no sidewalks on Fairfield Place. There's no sidewalks on Southfield, and there's no sidewalks on Northfield. There's a great sidewalk on South Pine Creek, which is great to go walk down to the beach. And I think all our neighbors appreciate it because we all walk down that way.
Does Lindbergh have sidewalks?
Lindbergh does not have
Yeah, tiny
sidewalks.
bit.
Do they? Okay. I don't live on
There's a
Lindbergh.
small
Lindbergh has,
portion.
Four,
There's a small portion.
but not down the whole line, not where this development would be.
We can go through it if need be, drive by, which is what.
Anyway, that's all.
Thank you.
Sure. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Hi.
My name is Jim Rollmeyer. I live on Lindbergh Court, and I've been there for 25 years. I did submit a letter, and I won't repeat all of that. I want to reiterate the purpose of the zoning regulations are to protect the integrity of the neighborhood. And I think that when something is submitted that is way out of zoning, not small, but way out of zoning regulations, it should be rejected out of hand. Residents should not have to petition. They should not have to hire experts, should not have to go with the problem for something that's way out of keeping with the zoning regulations right from the get-go. Now, the biggest issues on the zoning regs, I think, are the height, which has been spoken to, and the setbacks, which I'll just mention briefly. They're asking for a 10-foot setback. The zoning calls for 25. One Sasco is a big commercial building, more than 25-foot setback. It looks okay. Across the street, what they call the wedding cake building, it's within zoning regulations. It doesn't look crazy. 10-foot back is really encroaching upon the street. The little cigar store is 15 feet back. So 10-foot back setback for a building of this size is really out of keeping and it's excessive. Having said that, let me talk about parking. A lot of the people have been talking about parking, so I won't repeat everything. But even with 8-30G, it said that you need concrete evidence of a safety issue to reject it. Now, I think we have concrete evidence. We've had expert testimony about 40 to 120, I think it is, parking spaces needed along those streets. And there's no curbs. That means all of Lindbergh Court, all Lindbergh Street, all Fairfield Place, onto Northfield and beyond, it's going to be parking on both sides of the street. Fairfield Place is so narrow, 2 cars can't pass each other if there's parking on both sides of the street. If you're coming out of Lindbergh or Fairfield, which is where people would come out of this building, you can barely turn right. You saw the video. You have to wait a long time to turn right, and it's dangerous, if not impossible, to turn left, which means you go down the neighborhood streets to get to a corner that has a light. Residents have to do that now. Virtually everyone in this building will have to do that. If you have parking on both sides of the street, emergency traffic will have trouble. You'll have double parking for deliveries, which happen every day, even to the residents. You'll have, you'll notice when we had a snowfall just last week, we all got a call saying you can only park on the even side of the street. Not enough room to plow the streets otherwise. So when you got any kind of problems with emergency vehicles, school buses, any other delivery trucks, you're gonna have problems with parking on both sides of the street. Every day, even in the wintertime, you'll see children playing in the street. You'll see people walking their babies with carriages in the street. If someone parks to walk to a commercial area, they have to walk in the street. There are no sidewalks. So, and of course, people walking their dogs in the streets. Worse in the summertime, but even all year round, you see that. If you have all these parking, you know there's going to be an accident. It's just a matter of time. It'll be a bad accident. Kids playing around parked cars going down the street, you're going to have an accident. There's your concrete safety factor that we have a licensed engineer quantify for you. And this should be rejected, even under 8-30G. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Regarding current traffic flow. You're saying right now, people who live in the neighborhood have to go down to a corner with a light? Which corner has a light?
There's a light on Saskill and Post Road. There's a light at South Pine Creek and Post Road. So if I live in Lindbergh Court, go to South Pine Creek, up to the Post Road, which is where Harry's
Sasko
Corner
Hill
is.
is the one that's closer to Southport.
Yes,
And South Pine Creek is is like another block beyond Fairfield.
it goes by Harry's Corner and down towards the beach.
So people that cut through to avoid traffic, they also would try to get to those lights so they can exit. In other words, to make a left on the Post Road from wherever you are.
Well, if you're on the Post Road and you want to go down South Pine Creek or that side of town, instead of going all the way down to the light, you saw the long line of cars. You could wait 10 minutes to get up to the light. You will turn down Lindbergh, you'll turn down Sasko, and then go over Overhill. In other words, you'll go down all the residential streets because you don't want to wait the 10 minutes to get that downtown.
So they'll have to go to the residential streets to get to the next light. And you can actually go through like Overhill to the next light on.
No, what I'm saying is if you're on
can talk about what other people are gonna do. So I mean, we really shouldn't be asking public question. I don't mind if it's a
You can
simple,
observe.
I don't mind if it's a simple clarifying. You asked about the
I'm trying to
source, the
understand.
light.
That's something I hadn't
I
heard
just want to
before.
clarify, if you saw the video of the cars going down, they're going towards the center of town. If you're in that line, you've got a real long slog. If you're going south of the post road, say down towards town hall or down towards the beach, you'll cut off the post road and go through neighborhood streets, crisscrossing through the neighborhood streets. If you're on the neighborhood and you want to get on the post road, either go downtown or towards the highway, you will find a light because you can't find a gap in the traffic to turn right or left. So you'll go to the light.
So right or
Again,
left.
you'll go through side streets to get to a
And
light.
you would obviously want to go on the highway in Southport, not
Mr. Braun, I mean-
Brooklyn Road, because that's.
Mr. Braun, now's the,
Okay, I'm trying to understand it.
thank you.
But without the exacerbation of this building, you can see this every evening. Doesn't have to be a Friday evening. And you'll see it in a very pronounced way. So but my main point is, with cars on both sides of the street, you are going to have an accident. There are no sidewalks. Anyone who walks anywhere has to walk in the street. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just take a quick poll. Just come on up, sir. You're up next. I just want to get a sense of, because it's 9:20. I want to get a sense of who else wanted to speak. That's fine. I see one, two, I don't know. Ms. Harrigan, do we have three?
I think there's three.
That's what I thought. Yeah, okay. I see three in person. Mr. Green is four, Attorney Green is four, excuse me. My New York attorney coming out. Anybody online, Ms. Harrigan?
Nobody that's indicated so far.
All right, if anybody is joining us remotely, if you can please sign in the chat feature to identify that you would like to speak. Attorney Green, how long do you have?
I have about an hour.
What?
An hour.
You'll have an hour? Yeah. Okay. We're not gonna finish tonight, not even gonna, I think, try to attempt it, considering the commission's busy schedule.
I'm trying to take a picture of you. Is there a way of getting that as an exhibit that we can look at later? Like I'm taking a
I
picture
sus-
of it.
We wouldn't, I mean, I suspect I'm gonna ask them to submit it for the record. They're gonna need it for the record if he's gonna refer to it. Curfew is 10 o'clock. I mean, I'll accommodate somebody to finish up and such, but
February 18 is my understanding.
I will go over that at the end, but I think that's.
22.
I think if that's what Jim said, that's what it's gonna be next time, but we'll go over
So I
that.
can look at it later.
Commissioner Braun, we're gonna get that for the record, so
Okay.
feel free, but. So the floor is yours.
Okay,
Just your name and your address, please.
all righty. I hope you can hear me. I'm a little bit nervous. My name is Nelson Kwok. Obviously a resident of Fairfield Place. We have been there for 24 years. We've seen the neighborhood change.
What's the number then?
113, right on the corner of Overhill. So we're a block and a half away from the development. So we've seen the neighborhood change. Very few kids when we moved in. And slowly but surely, this must be something in the water, but all the kids are coming. Now we've got elementary, middle school, and a couple of high schoolers. Obviously, in 5 years, it'll all be older and in the streets, whatnot. January 7, 2016, my son was hit by a car. By what was it, Leah? A Chevy Silverado, I think.
Sir, I think you have to take that microphone with you as best you
Okay.
can.
The microphone.
This one is, okay.
Just put that in your back pocket. That's
Oh,
okay.
it moves, okay. The intersection of South Pine Creek and Post Road. 2 p.m., right after school. Right after school, basically. He was in the crosswalk not on his phone, just crossing the street, and he was hit by a truck. I have a record of that because there's a police report. Taken to the hospital, thankfully he's alive. Okay, I'm going to speak to the text amendments. Right now, they're asking for an exception to our present POCD, which means if you accept this text amendment, anybody else can apply for another text amendment, which means we're going from a neighborhood. This is Sasko Hill here. This is the bank. You can see the building. This is the spot on proposal that we were here last year. That's now the Carvana. This is Grill Britannia. You can see the scale of these buildings. This is the big building, it's colonial, 2 stories, but it's an office building. You can see the huge parking space. We've all spoken about parking and the lack of parking. There's parking here, but these are all single story and 2 stories. This is the wedding cake building, and this is what it's going to look like. The setback on this building is 40 feet. This is what Sunshine's development is going to look like with their 10-foot setback. It's huge. This is Fairfield Automotive. He's been there before us. This is the Southwood Vet. Gas station. Another gas station across the street. This is South Pine Creek. Cemetery. We've got a chiropractic. Hedge fund, I think. And this is down towards Post Road. You can see what will happen when we get this building in this space, because this is not going to be here forever. This is creep. This is urban creep. You do this, this is going to get sold. She's going to retire. These guys are older than I am. This may or may not be here. May not be here. Cemetery is not going to move. This is a chiropractic. This is a 1-story, and this is the I forget what this is. Anyway, you can see the rest of downtown. But this building is huge. This is what we're looking at. I know you don't. You really need to walk the neighborhood to appreciate the size and scale of this development. So by allowing these text amendments, you're opening the floodgate for this urban sprawl all the way down to downtown. We know 1675 Rowan, that 830G, is the same height as this, 13 units. And that building is right up against the curb. We walk by it all the time. I have a dog. I walk my dog every single day. I go from home all the way downtown and back. The scale it's going to change Fairfield. Right now, the POCD, according to our applicants, is conservative, right? They're considered conservative. The proposed POCD, which is not yet passed, is super aggressive. Because you're taking all these parking spaces, you're taking all the development and putting it in our town. What's going to happen, I suspect, after you deliberate on the POCD, is you're going to get something in the middle. We're not going to go 50 feet, but we're also not going to go 1 story. We're going to go 2 stories or 3, but not 50 feet. And it's going to be a mistake for you to pass these text amendments now, because once we put these buildings up, they're going to be here for 400 years, long past our time on this in Fairfield, because these buildings don't come down. There's no undo on this. Once you break ground, it's there. And that's what is in your hands. So it's, we appreciate your time and energy considering this, but this affects everybody. Not just this little neighborhood, not just this little parking lot or vacant lot. It affects everybody. It's a precedent. You're setting a precedent. Thank you for your time. I thank you for your energies.
Thank you very much. You mind?
It's yours.
So, thank you. We will take it down and fold it up, I guess. Yeah.
My glasses. I need my glasses.
Okay.
We're getting you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for all of your time and efforts and energy. We greatly appreciate it. My name is Nina Fatahi. I live at 88 Overhill Road with my family. We moved here 5 years ago from Brooklyn because we were looking for a less stressful and safer environment for our family. We were sick of having to circle the blocks for hours looking for parking spots, worrying about how far the car would be from our home. And so we said, great, we're going to move to the suburbs. We're not going to have that problem any longer. Well, this development really puts that all on the line. Rather than assuming that the spot in front of our home will be available, we will not be able to assume that any longer. I can imagine people putting cones in front of their homes to save their spot, which is what some, old school Brooklyn people do. They'll put cones in front of their little brownstone so that they can claim that spot as their own. All of you are Fairfield residents. I hope that you have driven on our streets, given that we are at the center of a lot of these POCD and development discussions. Unfortunately, I hope that you're very familiar with the fact that we all have very small driveways. So almost every single house on our streets has at least one car parked on the street. So what I foresee happening is that people will have to compete to get parking spots. And there's no guarantee that they'll get a parking spot in front of their home or even 2 houses away if this is going to be our reality. Another thing that I've been thinking about as I listen to, we've all heard there's no sidewalks at all on any of our streets. So that means that our children, we have really small lots. So our children are very close to the street. And if we have cars dispersed everywhere, the line of sight for cars driving through our streets is going to be impacted. So if our little precious children are walking or are playing hide and go seek between these cars with their neighborhood friends, there's a very high chance that a passing car will not have the ability to see our little kids. That is a huge concern. My child is 7 years old now. We are just now feeling comfortable with having her cross the street to go to her best friend's homes. And I wouldn't have that comfort, even at age 10. Back at Halloween, we had 2 of our friends from the neighborhood, 2 of our friends from a few streets away come trick or treat with us. And within a matter of 5 minutes, one of them almost got hit by a car. There was a lot of cars parked on the street because our neighborhood's very popular for Halloween. And he, 2 of the children had gone across the street to get candy. And he, without looking, and this is a 7.5-year-old boy, without looking on either side, he just ran, and he was like this close to being hit by a Tesla, which was occupied by another parent that we're all friends with. And it was a huge wake-up call. We were all really shaken. It was the start of our Halloween trick-or-treating, and it really emphasized that even a 7.5-year-old smart child is going to make mistakes like that. And it's not only horrible for the family who is the child, but it's also horrible for the drivers having that experience. And another thing that I was thinking about is it's going to increase the need for parallel parking. So if our children are playing around, people aren't going to see our children being like these are little kids. Like if they see this open spot, they might be playing in that spot, and there could be a car that's just going to come and there's a risk of having the child being run over by a car that's trying to parallel park. So what I'm asking is for you guys to uphold our enjoyment and safety of our homes for our families. This is really an inappropriate development given the size and the scale. And
You're my baby.
It's inappropriate given the size and the scope. I did send you all a video around, well, I didn't send it to you individually. I did send it to the TPC Commission web email. A video I took, it was January 17th, it was 12 p.m. on a Friday. I was turning into Fairfield Place. I go on and I'm literally on Fairfield Place 6 to 8 times a day, going to and from places. And it was just, I turned right onto Fairfield Place and there's just cars everywhere. So I whipped out my camera. I wasn't going fast, so it was really easy to do that. And it was a very obvious situation that happens all the time where you see the oncoming car had to pull over to the side to have me go. That is just the regular thing. And so that's only going to increase more and more. And I ask for you to please consider all these things for the safety of our children and for the enjoyment of our lives. Thank you so much.
Good evening. Hi, I have some material to share. They're entered into the record. There should be
Send it.
7. You could just take one and send it down. Good evening, everyone. My name is Erica Donegan. I live at 49 Lindbergh Court with my husband and 3 young children, ages 8, 6, and 3. So let me start by saying that I love the idea of creating a more walkable Fairfield and a more bikeable downtown in this part of the Post Road. It's something I would truly enjoy with my family. We walk and bike a lot in and around our neighborhood. And I really do appreciate the efforts of this commission to work towards that. So thank you. I know you've been flooded with letters from my neighbors who are not supportive of this proposal. But I do want to be clear. A majority of these people are not anti-development. We are simply asking you to uphold the existing zoning regulations, which are appropriate for this quaint neighborhood that is filled with kids. I've shared with each of you a packet to consider the very little people that you are impacting in a big way with your decision tonight. These photos are a small glimpse into what our neighborhood looks like on any given day. Our kids bike, play tag, walk dogs, play catch, have lemonade stands, water the community garden, all in and among the homes and yards of our neighbors. You've heard all of my fellow neighbors talk about that this evening, and it could not be further from the truth. This happens year round, not just, a few weeks in the summertime. We host block parties and have Halloween costume parades and garden together at our curbs and congregate on summer afternoons. This neighborhood is not a commercial design district. A 50-foot building with slashed parking requirements does not belong 10 feet away from 2-story single-family homes. If walkability is the goal of our downtown, safety has to come first. Vision zero does not exist when narrow streets without sidewalks are lined with cars generated from an oversized development without enough parking built in. The estimated overflow of what could be 130 cars circling these blocks and hunting for parking is a recipe for disaster, and any walkability at all will become a pipe dream. On behalf of our neighbors, but especially on behalf of my 3 young children and the dozens of elementary and preschool age children who live in this neighborhood, safety cannot be an afterthought in this decision you make. Lindbergh Street connecting Lindbergh Court has a narrow blind curve that school buses can barely navigate as it is. Having cars parked along the street makes it both impossible for a school bus to get through and outright dangerous. Fairfield Place is so narrow, as you've heard from so many people tonight, that even 2 SUVs passing each other without parked cars is a challenge. When you have parked cars on both sides of the street, it becomes entirely impossible. The idea of adding overflow parking or more traffic to these streets is alarming. It's just not realistic or safe. Our narrow roads cannot sustain this and remain a safe place for us to raise our young families, for us to actively walk and exercise within our own neighborhoods, or even simply navigating, pulling out of our own streets onto the Post Road. There are immeasurable ways this site can be developed for the better while upholding the existing zoning regulations in place today. I urge the commission to work with this or any developer to find a way to build reasonably and responsibly on this property. This commission has a duty to protect existing residential neighborhoods and being thoughtful and responsible with development decisions. And I know we can do better. Instead of simply extending the existing CDC zone with a rubber stamp, I hope the commission will take the time to consider the unique needs and characteristics of this neighborhood. What's here and what's missing differs greatly from what you'll find at the corner of Post Road and Reef Roads. A new, more thoughtful zoning plan that considers these differences would be a promising approach. Development can and should happen here, as so many of my neighbors have said, but it must be done thoughtfully with safety, practicality, and respect for the neighborhood at the forefront. I urge the commission to think carefully about the volume of children in this neighborhood whose daily life activities, such as waiting for the school bus, will instantly become a dangerous task. You must reject this proposal as it stands and take the time to create a plan that truly works for this area. Thank you for your time and consideration. This to the record as well.
Sure.
Like that. Might be tough to scan it.
Thing. Mosquito gap, sorry.
I just leave it there.
Dan, can this be emailed to the commission too?
It already has been.
Okay, great, thank
Might
you.
as well grab
This whole package or just that? This whole thing?
That has been, yeah.
Good evening.
Hello, I'm Chris McAprang. I live at 51 Overhill Road. This is quick. I don't have prepared comments. It's just I want to kind of drive home a few things that other people have said that I want to make sure are fully processed by the CPZ. The first is that it's not a big deal if someone else parks in front of your house. The main complaint we have is that there's no sidewalks. So when someone parks in front of your house, when there's a car parked along the curb, any walking, any activity has to take place on the other side of that car in the road. You've heard how many times we've said the roads are very narrow. There's not a lot of space to avoid a car that's driving on the road, especially if you're a child who's not paying attention, if you're riding a bike, if you're on a scooter, whatever. That's the safety issue that we're talking about. It's the parking and the narrow roads come together to make a really dangerous situation. I just want to make that clear. There's virtually no sidewalks in any of the neighborhoods south of Post Road. The other thing I want to point out is, as you probably saw in the video, traffic on Post Road is terrible. Post Road is one lane from somewhere in Southport all the way until you get to near Starbucks. It's a one lane road on the northbound side, which is northbound going into town, which is directly in front of the proposed site here. The traffic is terrible. Everybody's coming northbound from their jobs in Stamford, Greenwich, the city. And so in the evenings, that gets super congested. The 5 o'clock video is, I believe it, that I thought it would be worse, to be honest with you, than the video portrayed. So people are commuting back. They got off the highway at exit 19, and then everybody is jammed into a one lane road on Post Road for that stretch. And it's horrible. So I strongly encourage you to drive around the neighborhood, walk around the neighborhood, check out Post Road, especially rush hour commuting time, any weekday. It doesn't have to be a Friday. And then the last thing I just wanted to point out is we've already heard that the delivery trucks to Grill Britannia have nowhere to park legally. I'm not sure where the delivery trucks for a new, much bigger restaurant and all the retail that is proposed. I'm not sure where they will go. Apparently they can't go on Post Road. It sounds like there's not room for even the modest Grill Britannia's trucks to fit. So that just exacerbates any of the safety issues already. So it's not just cars, it's the trucks that come with the retail too.
Thank you. Mary Green? Oh, come on up, Mehmet.
I submitted a video.
Hold on, wait till you get to a microphone. Sorry, it's because we won't pick you up.
I submitted a video. It was late, like in the 5 o'clock time. Did it?
We don't have.
It was uploaded to the drive. Is that
How long is it?
2 minutes?
Well, why don't we do this?
If it was submitted after 5 o'clock, we don't have it, access to it presently.
But it's part of the record, and what I would do is maybe
We'll
call them.
Post it on. the-
Okay, okay. It just,
No, I'd call them tomorrow morning, and just make sure that they have it on their end. You've submitted it. It's not gonna be, we're not gonna finish tonight. It'll be part of the record.
okay.
I thought that was the three before Attorney Green.
Somebody on Zoom?
Is there, I mean, just because Attorney Green, it doesn't have to be the last person. I'm not,
No, he's not there.
oh, okay. Attorney Green, 15 minutes. Not for the entire, just at least for tonight.
I'm sorry.
15 minutes for tonight at least.
Sure. I have some materials to submit to the commission. Do you want me to do that tonight or next time or?
Tonight.
All right, fair enough. It's all in the record, but.
Oh, it has been, okay. Is that what I saw this afternoon?
Yeah, and a lot of that are excerpts from the regulations and that sort of thing. So this is not. This is all stuff you put in. Yeah.
Just drop it off. We'll pass it down.
Too big, too much.
This one was submitted in the record. It's another.
Today.
Today.
Just came in.
You have not you have not started your presentation.
Well, I did in the sense that I made remarks, for the record, Joel. And I represent an informal association of residents of Lindbergh Street, Lindbergh Court, Overlook, and Fairfield Place.
Mr. Santa provided his presentation, right?
He did, as did Mr. Montley.
Thank you, yeah. I apologize. It's just been a few, what was it? Almost a month. December, so thank you for that.
Sure. First of all, while I have your attention, I want to thank the commission for all of your hard work on this application and on behalf of my clients. I really want to thank the commission for your hard work on this application. And I know that this is a really busy time for the commission, and I know tonight is a tough night for a lot of reasons. And I also really want to thank the public and for many of their thoughtful comments tonight and for really addressing matters within the jurisdiction of this commission. And really a lot of the materials I was going to cover have been touched on. So I appreciate the commission allowing the public to sort of interrupt my presentation tonight. So my comments on this application are directed, on these applications are directed to a proposed project that has 40 residential units, that has a coffee shop that is supposed to be 1,045 square feet, that has a restaurant that is supposed to be 3,749 square feet, and a retail space of 1,574 feet. And that is the present proposal that is the subject of the special permit. And so all of my comments are geared towards that particular project. The bottom line here is that these applications need to be denied by this commission. I had emphasized before when I appeared before the commission that these are the kinds of neighborhoods, and I understand that you hear all applications and you fully applied the zoning regulations. But it occurs to me that these transitional neighborhoods are the neighborhoods that require the greatest degree of protection in Fairfield. For obvious reasons, and it is that boundary between the commercial activity that we want to see when we want to see successful commercial businesses in Fairfield. But we are, as you've heard so many times, we are a community of neighborhoods. And as you heard dozens of times tonight, this is a vibrant neighborhood and it merits the highest degree of protection. The bottom line here is there is not enough parking for this project as it is proposed. And I don't think anyone in this room believes that there is enough parking at present. And you've heard several members of the public sort of break down the calculations and the number of parking spaces per residential unit. And once again, the applicant has, as part of the text amendment, is asking the commission to find that 1.25 spaces are sufficient per residential unit. And there's just 21 spaces left for the rest of the activity on the site. And it's just not enough. And I don't believe that even the applicant believes that there's enough parking here. But the bottom line is there is not enough parking. The development is too intense for a 31,000 square foot, 7/10 of an acre size site. It's too intense. We do not have the infrastructure in this town at this time for a development of this kind. In the future, maybe, but it's not here now and it's not around the corner immediately. And this is sort of a project that really contemplates a much more urban environment than exists in Fairfield right now. And you saw the video of the traffic that exists on the post road, and it's no secret. And if on any afternoon, particularly later in the week, when you're driving and you're headed from, basically from the Westport direction towards downtown, that corridor from South Pine Creek all the way down to Mill Plain Road and into downtown is jammed. And again, it's all in the record. The building is too tall. The text amendments are unsupportable from a planning perspective. And honestly, this is the tail wagging the dog. This is a text amendment that really takes it's sort of mind-boggling that you're taking the Center Design Business District, you are putting it onto this 7/10 of an acre lot, and then you are amending the regulations as to the Center Design Business District up the street and also on this lot. And I'll get into it, but it's the lack of foundation and the lack of information that's been provided to this commission on the true impacts of the text amendments on the areas outside of this 7/10 of an acre parcel and how it affects the rest of the town. Some of those text amendments apply to the CDBD, to the Center Design Business District, but some of them apply to all of the design business districts under Chapter 12. And I'm not going to be able to get into them tonight in detail because we're just not going to have enough time. But what I had submitted to the commission, and I thought it was important, and I hope you have these with you when we continue this. I'll bring more next time. But it's important. I gave you the Schedule B, which has the proposed text amendments that are the subject of the application. But I also provided you with the entire Chapter 12, because I think that you need to have context and see the regulations that are proposed to be altered. And some of the text amendments are presented as sort of snippets, and they don't capture the entire section of the regulation being amended. There is a lack of evidentiary foundation, no pun intended, for the stormwater system that is proposed. And you have a letter, an updated letter from Mr. Santa, and hopefully one one slight silver lining of not closing the public hearing. And when I came here tonight, I fully expected that we would get this public hearing closed, and that was my objective, but that's not going to happen. But he can talk about sort of the areas that were not addressed. I provided you with a copy of his letter dated today. And I also provided you with a letter that he had done previously back in December, that you can see that the applicant hasn't and really can't address some of the infirmities that presently exist on the site. One thing is for sure, this application, if it were to be approved, would change life for the residents of the streets who spoke to you tonight. It will change that neighborhood forever. And I mean, we'll get into that in more detail as to why as we go through the text amendments. There are some distractions that the applicant has sort of interjected into this process. The mention last time we were here of a pending 8-30G application pertaining to this property is a distraction and not something that the commission should consider under any circumstances in sort of adjudicating these applications. These applications are taken one at a time.
That's fair, but I think his point was just, hey, we're not going to see it for a while. I just don't want you to have this plop in your lap and for the commission to be like, hey, what the heck is this? So, yeah, I don't.
I get it, but I think that
That's not my interpretation.
Well,
Got it.
so what I hear from my clients is concern that it's sort of, I think someone said like passive aggressive in a way, and but it is what it is.
I've said this to practitioners and to the staff, and I'll say it publicly. I like the idea that these applications are being filed simultaneously, as at least concurrently. We just experienced we just had an issue with Umpqua. I think maybe the practitioners are familiar with it, 15 Umpqua Road, where we had a while back now, regulation amendments come before us for that project. There was skepticism from I won't even say, there was just a little concern about about the regulation amendments. We wanted to have a planning session before a decision could be made. It was pulled back from us and an 830G was filed. And right now it's still pending appeal. We denied it, we lost in Superior Court. We are appealing it and waiting on a decision from the appellate court of whether they'll accept cert. And in my opinion, at least here, it's nice to see, and I think I'm not sure it's nice, I think it's helpful for us and for the public to see what the alternatives are concurrently, as opposed to one at a time, where at least with Umpqua, lost the ability for the regulation amendments and we were stuck with 830G. Now, you're right, they sit on their own, they're determined on their own, there are different standards, all that. But just from my standpoint, seeing them both and having the public see them both as potential alternatives, they both may be denied, they both may be granted. I don't know. I'm not judging anything. But at least from my standpoint, I've been saying this for a while, is I like seeing that because I think it's helpful for everybody to know what's on the table. And that's just my position at least. So you're absolutely right. We're going to be determining these applications on their own. The moratorium kind of forced their hand in a lot of ways, but I think it's helpful for everybody, commission, public included, to see what the alternatives are, so to speak.
Look, I guess where we sit, a better alternative would be a development that's more in scale with the neighborhood, that respects the neighborhood, has sufficient parking. So that should be kept in mind as well, and hopefully.
I'm not trying to prejudge anything and cast aspersions on what the applications are. It's just, we just had a sour taste in our mouth with another application where I have a feeling, I'll speak for myself only, at least with Umpqua, had we had the opportunity to really judge both, 830G and the regulation amendments, maybe the regulation amendments were a little more palpable. Now, I'm not saying that's the case here. But I'm just saying that it was at least from my standpoint, it's helpful to see the applications pending, to see what they are. They need to be judged on their own. And that's just my position. That's just a personal preference. Commissioner Ford.
I just want to piggyback on that. And I'm not prejudging anything either, and I know you may think that, Mr. Green, that the 8-30G application might be a red herring at some level. I think it's relevant to the application, just, because it's, yes, it's two different standards, two different applications, they would be judged independently. But I don't know how you talk about one without the other. So I think at the next hearing, I think it's the elephant in the room. We're gonna have to tackle it at some point, so we might as well take it up front if we can. in my opinion.
I don't know, I don't know yet with Mr. Nguyen, hold on, I didn't mean to open a can of worms, it's my personal preference, so to speak, and I'm not saying everybody's gonna agree with it, I'm just saying from a past experience and just the idea of everybody knowing what's on the table is always, in my opinion, helpful, but I don't know when we're gonna hear the 830G application, I have a feeling let's talk about, because we're gonna be finishing soon.
Can I make a comment?
Hold on, the other people want to make comments and it's 10 o'clock and I
I
didn't
don't
realize.
need to make comment.
That's fine. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on anybody's toes, but I didn't really want to open a can of worms at 10 o'clock.
I just want to make sure you're not speaking
Since
for
we're all
the
making
entire
comments, I'd like to make a
That's
comment.
my personal, it was pretty clear, I thought, but that's okay. It's 10 o'clock now. This is gonna be, meeting's gonna remain open, public comment will remain open. We were gonna go to what next meeting?
February the 18th.
And that is only gonna be this.
It's not, there are two
No,
small
I'm sorry, that's what-
applications that will be ahead of this that we don't expect to take a amount of time, but there will not be an administrative agenda.
The 830G application.
No, we don't.
That's what I wanted to make sure.
No, it's not our intention to have that application heard while this application is still.
Thank you. Okay, that's what I wanted clarification on.
February 18th.
February 18th is when.
And this will be the first item, of course, Mr. Went, right?
It will not.
Smaller items.
Two smaller items that have been waiting behind other larger traffic, so to speak. So we don't expect, it's a special meeting night, so there's not an administrative agenda. So we'll, beginning at 6:30, we'd start the hearing. There are two smaller matters that have been waiting behind applications that have taken a number of meetings to be adjudicated that will need to be heard first, but we don't expect that to take a very long time.
They both mine also, and I agree. I hope they would not go, one's a 2-lot subdivision and the other is as you know, because it's on file, the conversion of the Dolan Conference Center to student housing. So we're hopeful those will be quick, but then we pick up.
Okay.
Hold you to that. Mr.
Yeah.
Feld.
Well, I can't gauge public interest in that, but hopefully we won't have as much as we had for the bathrooms.
Okay.
If you remember.
Very cool.
Thank you.
So as I said, this application remains open, public comment remains open. I will adjourn the meeting until February 18th. The public, thank you for your kind words to us, and thank you for your very civil discourse, professional discourse. Thank you.